Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where Karen becomes a vegetarian and demands that her boyfriend do the same. Am I the jerk for telling my girlfriend to stop commenting on my eating habits after she told me to cut out red meat? I, 26 male, eat a lot of steak, about 5 or 6 days a week. I also lift weights every day, and steak is my main source of protein. My girlfriend, who's 26, turned vegetarian about 6 months ago, so she never eats anything I cook except for the sides, potatoes, veggies, pasta, and so on. Most days, I cook steak and pasta because it's easy to prepare. She never commented on my eating habits until about a month ago. I noticed that she started watching a lot of YouTube videos, specifically ones about the dangers of red meat. She knows I eat a lot of steak, chicken, and lamb, and it's been this way since we moved in together 2 years ago. At first, she simply asked if I was concerned about the amount of meat I consume, especially when it comes to potential health risks. As time went on, though, she began bringing up the environmental impact of raising ruminants, like how they can contribute to environmental issues. I didn't think much of it at first and assumed she'd eventually stop talking about it. But as the month went on, the topic shifted towards animal cruelty. Today was the breaking point. This morning, she told me I should cut red meat out of my diet entirely. She brought up animal cruelty again and tried to get me to watch YouTube videos about it. I told her I didn't want to watch the videos, and even if I did, they wouldn't change my eating habits. That's when the conversation escalated. She began talking about how people don't care about animals, how the animals are treated and how they're raised. At that point, I got upset. I've never once criticized her for being vegetarian or commented on her eating habits. I told her that if she doesn't want to eat meat, that's her choice, but she shouldn't force her beliefs on others. I also pointed out that ever since she started watching those documentaries, her perspective seems completely skewed. After we argued for a while, she went to bed and hasn't spoken to me much since. Sounds like you both have strong opinions about diets, but you should both respect each other's diets. That's the only way to coexist with views this extremely different. Think about your future family, if you're planning on starting one, and how you would raise the kids. Would they be vegetarian until they can make their own choices? This is a whole lifestyle. On the other hand, having steak up to 6 times a week is actually unhealthy. You can switch to chicken, fish, beans, and so many other things for protein that won't put you at risk of heart disease. Communication is key anyway. I wish you luck. You don't have to change your diet if you don't want to, but red meat 5 to 6 days a week is unhealthy, and incorporating more chicken and fish is a good idea. I'm also a vegetarian of 18 years, but I agree with you that your girlfriend shouldn't be trying to change you just because she's changed her own diet. Who's to say she's even going to remain vegetarian for more than a year or so? People's diets are personal, and meat is the easiest protein source, not the jerk. It's possible she feels unsupported in her vegetarianism and would appreciate if you made full meals that she could eat. 1 veggie meal per week is a reasonable ask as a compromise in my opinion. Her reality hasn't been warped. You're in denial about the health and ecological damage that meat consumption causes. Yeah, like he can eat whatever he wants, that's his right, but she has learned new information, and if she sees him differently for refusing to engage in what she sees as a moral issue, well, that's pretty understandable actually. I never comment on her diet, doesn't really work as a rebuttal when he doesn't have any moral problems with her diet. You're the jerk for staying with a vegetarian. I'm also a guy who lifts weights and does carnivore. It's not unhealthy like all these Redditors think. Would love to see their blood work and hormone levels. These are the kind of people who live on diets of highly processed foods and sugar. Relationships, diets, life, never take advice from these people. They never have a clue what they're talking about. But seriously, dump this psycho and find a good woman who will eat steak with you every day and who appreciates your gains. Let your current girlfriend go find some skinny vegan guy with long hair and glasses so they can talk about the environment all day and they can vote together for who they want to be president. Good luck, dude. Me and my fiance, together for 12 years, are waiting for a package from the girl he cheated on me with. My fiance, Oliver, and I have been together for 12 years, sticking with each other through thick and thin, long-distance relationship, the usual problems of a couple starting off very young, and so on. In the last few years, he's been struggling a lot with depression and anxiety, but he's slowly getting better. At some point during our long-distance relationship, we were living in 2 different countries. During his stay abroad, he became very good friends with 2 people, Ben and Sarah. The 3 of them bonded over shared experiences and mental health struggles. Eventually, Oliver came back, we started living together and became engaged. We chose a long engagement of over 2 years because we were both set on lengthy academic paths. Our relationship has been turbulent at times, but as we matured and got to know each other better in daily life, things became smoother. Everything was great. 3 years ago, Sarah moved closer to where we lived for a 2-year stay. We were all good friends and things seemed fine. Long story short, my fiance cheated on me with Sarah shortly before she left the country, and there was an emotional affair involved. I found out by snooping. Bad on me. I was devastated. I cut contact with her immediately and demanded that Oliver do the same. I almost broke up with him. We separated for 2 months. It was incredibly rough because I had no access to therapy or counseling at the time, and I was far away from home. Thankfully, my friends were amazing and supported me emotionally during that time. After those 2 months and a lot of soul-searching, we took the first tentative steps towards getting back together. It took me a long time to forgive him and rebuild my trust in him, but little by little, we healed and made it work again. That was 2 years ago, and things have been good since then. However, Ben did not take the news of their separation well at all. He has been passive-aggressive towards Oliver because he isn't speaking to Sarah anymore. Oliver has reacted well and has been firm about not contacting him again. 2 weeks ago, Ben told my fiance that he had given our new address to Sarah because she wanted to send us a package with stuff that belonged to Oliver. Oliver says she has nothing of his, and I believe him. They never lived together, and most of their friendship was long distance. He's been incredibly anxious about this whole situation and doesn't want any contact with her. I personally don't care about Sarah, but Oliver is dreading the arrival of the package. If it comes when I'm home, I'll just throw it away, but I don't want him to receive it and have an anxiety attack. I know I don't have to protect my fiance from this stuff, but he's hurting and I want to support him. I don't think there's anything compromising in the package because I've already found all the compromising material, unfortunately. I think this is just a passive-aggressive way for Sarah to remind us of her existence. As for Ben, I'm starting to believe that giving Sarah our address was his way of punishing Oliver for leaving their little magical trio. To give some context, I don't believe the package contains anything shocking. Sarah lived about 600 kilometers away when she was in the same country as us, so there weren't many opportunities for them to meet without me knowing. I'm aware of when the cheating happened. After I found out about the affair, I demanded access to all of Oliver's accounts and he complied. He blocked Sarah everywhere, and I trust him on that because she later had to contact us through mutual friends when Ben reached out to her during a personal crisis. Oliver's anxious reaction doesn't surprise me. He used to suffer from severe social anxiety to the point of being paralyzed by the thought of any unpleasant interaction. He's worked hard on his mental health, gotten therapy and medication, and is doing much better now. He reacted maturely to the recent developments. He told me about Ben contacting him right away and acknowledges that this is his mess to clean up. But I can tell he's suffering. The other day, I picked up a huge package from a neighbor, and when Oliver walked through the door and saw it, he tensed up so much. It was kind of funny in a messed up way. One thing I didn't explain fully is Ben's reaction. He didn't take it well when Oliver and Sarah stopped talking. The three of them had been extremely close, but Ben in particular had this idealized, almost magical view of their trio. He was in love with Sarah and often talked to Oliver about how much he adored her. To be honest, I suspect Ben also had feelings for my fiance. When Oliver first told Ben that he and Sarah weren't speaking anymore and explained why, Ben seemed to accept it. But 2 weeks later, he contacted Sarah to tell her that he was not doing well mentally. That's when she reached out to us. We contacted Ben's family, and thankfully he was okay. Oliver set boundaries with Ben afterward, but didn't cut him off completely. Now, with his package business, I feel more strongly than ever that Ben's actions are his way of punishing Oliver for breaking up their group. As for my personal feelings, this whole thing has been exhausting. The general advice from people I've talked to has been to cut Ben off, and I think that's spot on. I plan to tell Oliver that I believe cutting ties with Ben is the best idea, and I hope he'll agree. As for the cursed package, I lean toward throwing it away without opening it. I want nothing to do with Sarah, but ultimately it's Oliver's decision. If the package arrives, I'll offer him the choice to either throw it out or go through it together before discarding it. Update 1 year later. After reading through all the advice I received, I sat down with Oliver and we decided we didn't want the package. He messaged Ben saying, "Tell Sarah we don't want anything from her," and then blocked him. That was last year. Since then, life has moved on. Oliver changed jobs and he's much happier and relaxed now. My job is well paid and interesting, and I've been able to pursue side projects. We got married this summer and the wedding was perfect for us. Lively, full of food and drinks, surrounded by our friends and family. It was expensive, but we didn't care. Last month, Oliver left for a conference on another continent, so I've been home alone. One evening, I came home to find a package in the mailbox addressed to Oliver. The return address was from a place where I know Sarah once lived, though the name on it was unfamiliar. I had a moment of, oh no, it's her, but quickly thought it would be pretty crazy for her to send something now. Later, while Skyping with Oliver, I mentioned the package. When I told him the sender's name, he didn't recognize it either, so we decided I'd open it while we were on the call together. Well, I was right. It was from her. Inside were several postcards wishing Oliver happy birthdays and Merry Christmases, all unsigned. There were also little notes with sayings like dance in the rain, look at the clouds, and walk barefoot, those typical meaningless platitudes. And then there was a romance novel. I laughed out loud when I saw it, but Oliver was more creeped out than amused. The book, Stargirl, is about a quirky, misunderstood girl who plays the ukulele, dances in the rain, and can't fit in with the normies. The narrator dates her, but eventually breaks up with her because he fears not fitting in. He regrets it forever. It's not a terrible book, I like the writing, but the hero comes off as too much of a special snowflake, and her behavior borders on creepy. The book had a sad face drawn on the dedication page, along with a note that said, "Read the sequel, you'll understand." It was full of notes scribbled in the margins, idealizing the hero and how magical and beautiful she was. Some of the notes described the main character agonizing over whether to stay with her or leave her to fit in. There were even drawings of her, who looked like an idealized version of Sarah. Honestly, I couldn't stop laughing at this manic pixie dream wannabe nonsense. Oliver, however, looked like he'd just found a cockroach in his sandwich. He said Sarah was clearly unhinged and that he didn't want the book or anything else from her in the house. I meant to deal with the book sooner, but last week was absolute chaos for me. I worked 70 hours, took on a 2-week project, and organized an art exhibition over the weekend. On top of that, I got terrible health news about a close friend, so Sarah's drama was the last thing on my mind. When I finally had time to think about it again, I was furious. What does she think she is? We haven't seen her in 3 years. At first, I considered unblocking her just to tell her to stay away from us, but I quickly discarded that idea. I briefly entertained the idea of finding her address and sending her a copy of Holes with random internet memes stuffed between the pages with a note saying, "This is a riddle. If you solve it, I'll leave my wife for you." But then I realized it was better to just ignore her entirely. In the end, I threw the notes in the recycling bin and put the book in a free box so someone else could pick it up. If she tries to contact us again, I'll reconsider my options. But honestly, I doubt she will. My sister-in-law thinks having kids entitles her to our family's cabin all winter. My grandparents own a cabin near a ski resort, about an hour and a half from where we live. When I was a kid, most of my family used it regularly, but after a few years, it sat empty. This happened when my generation moved away for school and there wasn't anyone to use it. Recently, more of us have moved back and started using the cabin again. It was easy to share because only 5 of us were using it and we were all considerate, knowing it's family-owned. We would message each other about availability and keep track of what essentials like cleaning supplies needed replacing. This dynamic changed when my brother, his wife, and their 3 kids started using the cabin. My sister-in-law always claimed to hate the place because it wasn't meant for entertainment. It's mostly a spot for a few people to crash during a ski trip. However, last year, she enrolled her kids in the ski team and started going directly to my grandparents, telling them she wanted to use the cabin more often. My grandparents were okay with it, saying as long as it wasn't already reserved by others, they could use it. But she started reserving every weekend that winter, even though they didn't end up using half of them. When I asked her about getting a weekend for myself, she acted strangely over the phone. I decided to visit her in person to find a free weekend. When I asked why they had every weekend booked, she said, "We don't want it every weekend. We just want the ability to go every week, and we don't want to decide until that Friday." She said this with a straight face, expecting it to be normal. I reached out to my other cousins who also use the cabin and found out they had all received similar responses from her. Most of them had recently moved back to town and assumed this was normal since she was the only one with kids. We decided to talk to my grandparents as a group and explain the situation. My grandparents understood and changed the policy. Now, each of us gets an equal amount of weekends and we can swap weekends with each other if needed. This really upset my sister-in-law. She started calling all of us frantically, trying to get our weekends. She said things like she had already invited friends for specific weekends or that her kids needed to be there on certain dates. When that didn't work, she began texting us, demanding we not go on our designated weekends. We all compiled the texts and took them to my grandparents. Now my sister-in-law can only use the cabin if she gets confirmation that none of us will be there, which means she barely uses it anymore. She's still upset about it, but the situation has brought my cousins and me closer. We've all agreed to be adults about the cabin and communicate with each other if any conflicts arise. Edit. No, the cabin is not an Airbnb or anything like that. I check every year. There's a nearby cabin on Airbnb that we've used if large groups want to go up. She could be renting it out under the table to her friends, but I think it's more about showing off than making money. My brother doesn't get involved. He sees himself as above these petty squabbles, but I know my sister-in-law is parroting his opinions. I don't think she would do this without his agreement. My grandparents are awesome. These aren't huge blowouts with them, just 2 or 3 minute conversations during longer visits. We're mostly adults, and we can discuss things quickly and calmly with them. My boyfriend of 10 months is best friends with his ex. She refuses to meet me, and it's getting weird. I started dating my boyfriend Jeff 10 months ago. This relationship has been amazing so far, and I definitely see a future with him. There's just one problem. He has a weird relationship with his ex that's starting to make me really uncomfortable and suspicious. When we started dating, he often talked about his best friend Jenna, who he also owns a business with. He made it pretty clear that she was an important person to him. I knew they had spent vacations together, and he mentioned hanging out with her parents a few times too. A few weeks after I met him, I went through all of his pictures on Facebook, because who doesn't do that? And I saw a bunch of very coupley pictures of him and Jenna. I also found her Instagram and looked through it, and it was filled with pictures of Jeff. A lot of them had hashtags like relationship goals and other similar things. That's how I figured out they had dated. I kept waiting for him to tell me himself, but he never did. About 2 months after we started dating, I asked him directly if he had dated her, and he admitted it. He told me they met in school and had similar ideals and ambitions. They dated for 9 months and broke up a year and a half ago. I asked him why they broke up, and he said their relationship was awful and that they worked much better as friends. They started their business after they broke up, and things have been going well between them since. I started to get suspicious when more time passed, and I still hadn't met her. I met his friends and family pretty soon after we started dating, but I didn't meet Jenna. I went to several social events that I expected her to be at, but she was never there. There were so many occasions when I thought I'd finally meet her, but I never did. For example, I went to their office a few times to meet Jeff after work, but Jenna had already left. Other times, Jeff would come outside to meet me, so I wouldn't have to go in. Things started to get really weird about 3 months ago. Jeff and Jenna were hosting an open house one evening. Jeff came over to my place after work, and we had a few hours before it started, so we went out for dinner and then walked to the office. I assumed I'd come in and help set up, but when we were a block away, he asked if I had a lot of work to do and pointed out that there was a nice coffee shop nearby. He walked me there, sat me down, and left me to go get ready with Jenna. He told me to come by the office in an hour and a half. About an hour and a half before I left for the office, I texted Jeff, saying I hoped everything was going well and asked if there was anything I could do. He replied, "Something's come up for Jenna, and she can't be here tonight." By then, I was really suspicious. When I got to the office later, sure enough, Jenna wasn't there. People kept asking about her all night, and Jeff told them that she had a family emergency. Afterward, when we were walking to the car, Jeff explained what had happened. Apparently, while he and Jenna were getting ready, she had a panic attack and said she was scared to meet me. She told him she either had to leave or he had to tell me not to come. He chose to let her leave. Since then, a few more strange things have happened, and I still haven't met Jenna. One time, Jeff and I were hanging out, and he needed to stop by the office to grab something. When we were almost there, he checked his phone and said, "Jenna's still there. Let's go for a walk." So we walked around for half an hour until she was gone. After that, I told Jeff I was really uncomfortable with this whole thing. I could respect that they were friends who had dated, but the way she was acting made me suspicious. Jeff apologized and admitted he was also upset with her behavior, but didn't know what to do about it. He even told me a few more strange stories about her. He went to a party a few weeks ago. I didn't go, and his phone died during the night. When he got home and charged his phone, it was full of texts from Jenna saying she was sitting outside in her car, asking if I was there. She never ended up going to the party because she wasn't sure if I was there or not. Now, here's the kicker. Jeff and Jenna are currently on a 2-week-long camping trip. You gotta be kidding me. They've been planning this trip since before I met him, but considering her behavior, I feel really uncomfortable about him going. I just checked her Instagram, and she posted 5 new pictures of him. As great as Jeff is, I'm really starting to get fed up with the situation, and I'm seriously considering ending things when he gets back. Am I being unreasonable? You're not being unreasonable at all, and I totally understand why you're upset. If I were in your shoes, I'd be asking Jeff some questions. Does he know why she doesn't want to meet you? Is she like this with anyone else? Tell him how much the situation bothers you and how uncomfortable it makes you feel, especially the camping trip. Maybe you could arrange to meet Jenna in a neutral place like a cafe or restaurant with Jeff there. If I were you, I'd want some answers. Best of luck. OP. It's kind of a relief to hear that I'm not being unreasonable. I've actually asked Jeff if he knows why she's acting this way, and he says he's asked her the same thing, but hasn't gotten a clear answer. He says he even asked if she still had feelings for him, and she said no. They're already on their trip, so there's not much I can do about it right now. But when he gets back, I'll definitely try asking him some more questions about what's really going on with her behavior. Honestly, you've been way more patient than most people would be. I probably would have broken things off when I found out they had dated and he didn't tell me. Not to mention all the strange, over-the-top things she's done since, and now he's on a 2-week trip with her? That's just too much. OP. I feel like I might have ended things already if Jeff wasn't so great in other ways. This really is the best relationship I've ever had, but Jenna is making things really complicated. I broke up with my ex just last week over something similar. Her ex was super clingy and still in love with her, but she wanted to stay friends with him. Then I found out they were going on a vacation together and I wasn't even invited. I confronted her about it and she refused to acknowledge that it was messed up, so I ended it. You should confront your boyfriend when he gets back. You don't have to tell him that he can't be friends with her, but you do need to let him know how this makes you feel. If he gets defensive or tries to gaslight you, leave him. Don't let someone treat you like garbage just because they're protective of an ex. This girl clearly still has feelings for your boyfriend and her intentions are probably not as innocent as they seem. Maybe your boyfriend is just clueless, or maybe you're not his priority. Update 15 months later. For a few months after I wrote my original post, not much changed. Jeff and I kept dating, and he stayed friends with Jenna. I never did meet her, but everything else in the relationship was going well, so I tried to put up with it. Things got really tough when I took a 3-month work contract that was 12 hours away. I barely saw Jeff during that time, but I checked Jenna's Instagram almost every day, and more often than not, she was posting new pictures of them together. Since I couldn't be around, I felt like Jenna was the one spending all her time with Jeff, and I started feeling like the other woman. I felt completely worthless and stressed out, knowing my boyfriend was always with someone I already had so many doubts about. While I was away for work, I made the decision to break up with him. As soon as I came back, I ended things and told him that his relationship with Jenna was unacceptable to me. I told him flat out that he'd have a hard time dating anyone who wasn't Jenna as long as she was in his life. He kept saying he didn't understand why it was such a big deal and swore he hadn't cheated on me. But I explained that allowing their friendship to continue was disrespectful to me and our relationship. I told him it didn't even matter to me whether or not he physically cheated. He had already shown me a lack of respect. We didn't speak for a few months after that, but recently we started talking again. He finally apologized for everything, admitted that he handled the situation very poorly, and told me that he and Jenna are no longer friends. It turns out Jenna really did have feelings for him. Oh gee, who would have thought? And was holding out hope that they'd get back together, which is why she acted so strange around me. As for me, I'm dating someone new now, and things are going much better. I definitely learned a lot from that relationship, and I'm much better at setting boundaries now. Jeff and Jenna also no longer run their business together now. My half-sister is demanding to work for my family business. My mom passed when I was 4. I have 2 older brothers who were 6 and 7 when she passed. Our dad remarried just after my 9th birthday and had 2 kids with his second wife. My brothers and I are 28, 30, and 31 now, and my half-sister recently turned 15. My brothers and I work with our mom's parents. She set up a restaurant with them before she had us, and our grandparents have told us we'll be the owners eventually. As it is, we make decisions like owners. My half-sister is obsessed with being a chef. She watches all the cooking shows and wants to be famous. Recently, she started asking if she can work at the restaurant and start to get to know the family business. She said she'd love to take over as head chef one day, and her mom could be head waitress. My brothers told her she was getting way too carried away, but she got all excited. She ended up talking to our dad about working for us. He said he was okay with it as long as we were. We're not. When it comes down to it, this is a business our mom started with her parents for us to take over someday, for our family, and none of us believe she would want our dad's second wife or our half-siblings who are nothing to her working there and taking such a huge place in it. We know our grandparents aren't comfortable with it either. I'm the most gentle out of us 3, so I told her she couldn't work for us. I encouraged her to find somewhere else to work instead. She asked me why, and I told her it was a decision made by those of us who owned and ran the business. She asked me how it could be a family business if we don't allow family to work there, then said how her mom should have been asked a long time ago. I told her that wouldn't make sense since her mom isn't related to my grandparents, the owners, and that ultimately it's my mom's legacy for her kids and how we're trying to honor that. She said it was dumb and forget how my mom would feel when she can't even speak about it. My dad and his wife are so upset we turned her down. They said she is our family and that should be what matters. It also brought some bitterness up about dad's wife not being offered a place at the restaurant years ago. Seems there's been some weirdness because dad had worked alongside mom and my grandparents for a while when they were first married. Am I the jerk? ETA. A lot of it revolves around money and legalities. When my dad got married, his wife approached my grandparents and told them she wanted to adopt me and my brothers, and how she and my dad wanted her to be the one to take control of any money that was meant to go to us, including savings my mom left my grandparents in control of. She told them she was going to be our mom now, and that she would be taking over finances for the family, that she needed to know everything we had and wanted access to it. When my brothers and I said no to being adopted, she and dad approached my grandparents about having a conversation with us, and brought up the fact that they hadn't done any of the other stuff asked. She told them she was not comfortable with our photo being in the restaurant and said they needed to take it down. It was a photo of us with our mom and grandparents, because they were the parents now. The tone was set from there, and I suspect they must have asked to work in the business with the clear resentment they have that they weren't employed there a long time ago. Can't confirm it, but it was clearly expected my grandparents would ask dad and his wife to work there. Not the jerk. Your grandparents are the owners. You have no say. If she wants to be a chef, great. Your dad and stepmom should help her. McDonald's is a good place to start for her. And maybe culinary school first, if she wants to become a famous chef, unless she's Gordon Ramsay in disguise. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. She's family, but not to your grandparents on your mom's side. That makes sense. Very entitled, the mom and the daughter are. Neither one of them deserve to work there, especially after disregarding and disrespecting your late mom's feelings and legacy. I'd ban them from the place for life. No one is owed anything. Sis feels this is something she's entitled to, and next thing you know, she wants her stake in it. This isn't her family's business, and neither she or her mother belong working there in any capacity whatsoever. Grandparents and siblings all agree, case closed. I can somewhat see why your half-sister is upset, but also not because of the entitlement of her, and more so her mom is clearly strong. OP, the fact that your maternal grandparents aren't comfortable could be significant on a number of levels. I may be grasping at some straws here, but I'm willing to bet that your stepmom has tried to throw her weight around with the family business before now. It sounds like your dad has no ownership of and little involvement since your mom passed, so he can buzz off trying to tell you or your brothers and his late wife's parents what to do with your restaurant and her legacy. In response to another comment, the stepmom and half-sister don't want to simply work at the restaurant. It sounds like they want to run the show. The sis is a teenager. Where do you think she gets all the aggro and defensiveness about her mom not being involved years ago? It's likely been taught to her by her mom. Not the jerk. Stick with your instincts and dodge these 2 bullets and honor your mom's wishes. Well, what do you think? Should OP go ahead and hire his sister to work at the restaurant or not? Please let us know. Absolutely not. The entitlement in this one is off the charts. Am I the jerk for letting my daughter cry instead of fetching her tablet? Context. 6 years ago, my wife was laid off. She struggled to find a job in the following months, and we couldn't afford raising the kids, 2 boys and 1 girl, with my salary. An old client offered me a well-paying job overseas, so I took it. Last month, I came back after I agreed with the company to work from home, and they made the legal arrangements for it. When I was overseas, I'd talk to them every day and visit once a year. Whenever I was with them, I could notice that my wife was spoiling our daughter. I'd talk to her about it, but she'd tell me she knows what she's doing and that she's the one raising her every day, and that there's no harm in treating her like a princess. Our daughter is now 9, and while she's still our daughter and will always be, she's not exclusively that, and will need to start relying on herself more. When I came back, I found out that my wife has been doing her homework. My teenagers told me that my mom bought their sister 3 iPads that she smashed when having tantrums in the last year and bought her a new one 2 months ago. If our daughter asks for something, she will not stop crying until we get it for her. She'd literally be sitting on the couch and start screaming, "Water!" until someone brings it to her. If she forgot her tablet upstairs, she'll order her brothers to go get it for her, and if they refuse, she'll start crying. Yesterday, she tried doing the same. I ordered my boys to stay still, and I told her to go fetch it herself. She kept crying for 15 minutes. I was hugging her all the time and comforting her. When she stopped, I told her that she still has to go get it herself, but I will follow her if she wants. She was still annoyed, but replied saying that she's a big girl and can fetch it by herself. When my wife came back from an errand, I told her what happened. Instead of supporting me, she was angry at me for letting her cry and told me that I was a jerk who preferred to let his daughter cry for 15 minutes instead of taking 30 seconds to help her. I didn't expect that reaction from her. I told her that she's ruining our daughter, and if we keep treating her like that, we will raise a pathetic person who can't rely on themselves for the simplest thing. I told her that she needs to stop doing her homework, and instead, we should guide her to figure out the answers by herself. And we should also make her do the chores her brothers did when they were her age. She replied that I was welcome to keep being a jerk to our daughter, but she'll keep treating her nicely. She warned me to not cry or feel guilty when my daughter grows up and wants nothing to do with me. The last thing I want is for my daughter to despise me, but at the same time, I want her to grow up to be a strong, independent woman. We aren't going to be with her for the rest of her life, and even if we were, it's important for every adult to be able to fend for themselves. Not the jerk, but there needs to be some serious intervention here. You had to hold and comfort her while she cried? I can bet you that she doesn't do this nonsense at school. You and your wife need to stop this immediately. Hold her and comfort her while she cried because she couldn't be bothered to go upstairs to retrieve her iPad at 9 years old? Are you serious? This girl needs a real shift in reality. OP needs to stop with that immediately, although he is not the jerk as he understands just how bad it is and has the right idea. OP's wife is a jerk though. She sure doesn't mind treating her daughter better than the boys, as if that's not going to push them away, like she called out OP on the way he wants to treat his daughter. If you can, OP, please intervene. Get help, something. I honestly don't have any advice on what to do here, other than to encourage your daughter to do things for herself, and not replace things once they're broken, and teach her about actual real life. But that girl is going to struggle in adulthood and future relationships if this continues. Look, it sounds stupid, but this is actually good parenting. Kids have tantrums and should learn to self-soothe, especially if a parent is teaching them how. Tantrums will stop by age 4. This girl never had that, so he needs to teach her how to self-soothe while not giving in.
Hey Reddit boy, when you were little and threw tantrums, did your parents teach you how to self-soothe?
Yeah, with dad's belt and mom's paddle. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
No wonder there's so many Karens in the wild.
Should I make my sister-in-law pay above average rent for one bedroom? I'm 100% being petty here, but curious if I'm actually wrong. Most of my husband's family think I'm being childish and need to let the past go, as my sister-in-law can't afford this, but her behavior towards us in the past makes me feel that this is warranted. 2 years ago, my house burnt to the ground after being struck by lightning. Thankfully, it was during the day, so our kids were at school and my husband and I were at work. We lost everything, but we were safe. It took almost 11 months for the insurance to pay out. The insurance covered 1 month worth of hotel stays, but after that, we were made to fend for ourselves, and the only option we had was to move in with my sister-in-law. She tells us we can have her spare room and her office space, since she used neither of the rooms, and her stipulations were that we needed to purchase all of our own food and pay her $100 a week. By week 3, all of that changed. She then decides that we need to pay her $250 a week, and we can only use one room. So all 5 of us were crammed into the smallest room she had, which was the size of a glorified closet space, and didn't even fit a twin bed and a small dresser, so we lived out of trash bags and slept on the floor. For close to $1,000 a month some months, and still had to purchase all of our own food, despite her claiming my kids on her food stamps. She also had no bills outside of her land tax, $450 a year, electric and heating oil, which she hardly ever filled. So we were essentially paying her so that she could do leisure activities. It was the worst 8 months of my life. 3 months ago, my grandmother decided that she wanted to go to assisted living after a fall and transferred the deed of her house to me and basically said it was mine now. It's a 5-bedroom farmhouse. My boys insist on sharing a room, so we have 2 extra bedrooms. Well, my sister-in-law lost her house last month due to not paying her land tax for several years, and asked if her and her stepdaughter could stay with us until they have enough money to move down south. I said sure, 1 bedroom, $800 a month, and you have to buy and cook all of your own food separately because my daughter is vegan. She looked at me like I had 10 heads and said that she and her stepdaughter should not be made to share a room when there are 2 extra bedrooms, and stated that she cannot afford a rent of $800 a month while purchasing all of her own food on top of it. I said, neither could we. But we managed to cram 5 people into a glorified closet space while you were getting $1,000 and food stamps. Take it or leave it. She decided to leave. Again, I am being told that I'm childish. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. It's $250 a month for the room and $750 a month for you having to see her stupid face every day. You're giving her an 80% discount on the rent because she's family. Wow, I was really going the other way when I read the title. But yeah, you're not the jerk. You simply treated your sister-in-law how she treated you, not worse and not better. If she thinks it's unfair, then it shows that she knew what she did was wrong first. Forget anybody who says that you should accommodate. Best thing ever that she leave. Enjoy your farmhouse. OP would still be treating her better. Sister-in-law's problem is of her own making. Took years to create, and she could have avoided the whole thing if she used some of the rent OP gave her for taxes. OP lost everything from a fire that she had no part in making and couldn't have predicted. She had fire insurance. What else could she have done? Sister-in-law was a jerk when OP's family had an emergency. Childish and petty? Oh yeah, but also not the jerk. Tell your sister-in-law and everyone else that you reap what you sow. In my opinion, you're being extremely generous in requesting that she pay $200 less than what you paid for one room. I'd argue that it's neither childish nor petty. People who use the misfortune of others for their own gain are never going to grasp the magnitude of what they've done until they've been forced to make similar choices. In this case, I'd wager the sister-in-law still won't understand, but trying to make her understand is a reasonable, responsible thing to do. Am I the jerk for telling my son that he'll have to share his late mom's business with his stepmom and siblings? I, 48 male, have a 19-year-old son who was the product of my first marriage. When my son was 9, my late wife passed. When we were both 25, she had used 80% of her inheritance to buy a gas station. She quit her job and for 5 years focused on the gas station. The first few years were rough, and we needed the money I made from my job as a waiter to supplement our lifestyle. In the 2 years before she passed, I became involved in the day-to-day operations. In her will, the gas station was left entirely to me. However, she indicated that she hoped I could teach my son about the business because while some families pass down homes, this was her legacy. I have since remarried to my wife, 42 female. She has a 15-year-old son from a previous relationship who I consider my own. The business is smooth enough that we can mostly be absentee owners. My wife, however, has been working there for all day, every Saturday for a while now. She often brings my stepson to work. Regretfully, I was too wrapped up with my life's events to spend much time teaching my son about the business. I recently have become sick, and my wife has constantly brought up my will, and so has my older son. We've had many fights where she has stormed out and not come back for hours when I told her that my late wife wanted her son to get it eventually. Because the medication I take gives me feelings of anxiety and depression, it's extra painful when my wife will not want to talk to me because she's upset. She said that it was not fair to my stepson that I tell him I consider him my son, yet I would not be leaving part ownership of the business, our greatest marital asset and legacy, to him. I had originally set up my will so all of my assets outside the business would go to my wife, and then she'd get 10% of the station. My other assets would give her around half my estate, and the business stake was just in case she needed more financial stability. My stepson gets a trust, but the remaining 90% would go to my son. But I feel torn because I really do not know what is right anymore. After a heart-to-heart, I changed my will so that my wife, stepson, and my son would each have 1/3 of the business. The rest of my will remained the same. When my son got home from college and I decided to take him out so we could be alone, I broke the news to him gently that he would have to split the business equally with his stepmother and stepbrother. He was silent for a long time. He told me he believed his stepmom would end up trying to force a sale with his stepbrother eventually. He then said this didn't come as a shock to him, but he was sure his late mother would have been surprised and told me to think on that. Then he walked out, and he has avoided me since. Am I the jerk for doing what I've done? I already see the tension in the house, and I feel like I always come home and walk into the aftermath of an argument between him and his stepmom. You're the jerk. You're disrespecting your late wife's wishes and letting your current wife ruin the relationship with your son. He cares more about how his wife feels than his own son. It's obvious this is how it's been for a while since the son already guessed his dad would do him out of his mom's business. As he did state, his mental issues have been getting worse, to which I think is 100% on his new wife, and I think he was doing it to make everyone happy, whilst ignoring his son and his late wife's wishes. I could be wrong though. You're the jerk. This station was purchased with your son's mother's inheritance. You know that your first wife wanted the business to go to her son. You are allowing your current wife to bully you into her demands. She only works on Saturday, so it isn't as though she has poured her life into ensuring the business is successful. However, it sounds as though your first wife did. By splitting it into thirds, you're doing over your son. Your stepson and wife will have the majority ownership together, Not to mention, why are you giving stepson an equal share as your son? It isn't as though this is just some random piece of property. The strong financial and historical ties to your son's mother make this an easy and clear answer. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for changing his will or not? Please let us know.
My heart always breaks in these stories when someone picks their new spouse over their kid.
Don't stop painting the mural? Sure thing, boss. For the last 3 years, I've worked as a muralist for a mural company. It's hard work, but also rewarding, as I was beautifying public spaces. I had a good boss. He was a skilled painter who worked alongside us on big projects, in addition to providing us with plenty of financial incentives and encouragements. Unfortunately, he retired last year and gave full control of the company to his business partner. It immediately became a crap show. The business partner controlled the administration side of the company. He was not a painter and didn't understand the work it took. He would overbook clients and overpromise on completion dates. He never offered us incentives and would only berate us for not getting jobs done quick enough. We tried to tell him that the old boss had always encouraged us to take our time and deliver the best mural, as the company's reputation rested on the quality of our work. We also tried to explain that as artists, we want to be proud of the work that we put out there. He brushed it off with, "You're paid to finish jobs. Just get it done." This was incredibly demoralizing, and after 2 months of churning out rushed work, we were burnt out. One of our 4 muralists quit. The final straw came 3 months later. Our company won a huge bid to paint the side of a 5-story tall building using my design. I told the boss that it would take us 5 weeks to complete. However, a week before the project was due to start, he told us that we had 3 weeks. We protested, citing that we're down 1 muralist, safety issues, weather changes, and the complexity of the design. He, of course, told us that the contract had been signed and brushed off our concerns. He did, however, offer us financial incentives for overtime work this time, and knowing that there was nothing we could do, we accepted it. I simplified the design, and we planned to stay late. The weather got bad as predicted. There were a few days of rain where we barely got work done. We fell behind and told the boss that he had to get us an extension. Our client was nice enough to grant another week, but our boss was upset. He would show up to the job site regularly just to rush us. On the 3rd week, we were working when a light drizzle started. We were waiting in our cars, hoping that it would pass when the boss showed up. The moment he saw us, he started accusing us of being lazy. To quote, "This is why we're falling behind." One of my coworkers said through gritted teeth, "Can't you see it's raining?" But before we could explain why we couldn't paint in the rain, the boss yelled, "If you're scared of a little drizzle, you shouldn't be a muralist. Get back to work." My coworker shot me a look, and I knew immediately the malicious compliance was on. The 3 of us got back on the scaffolding and began working. The boss smugly said, "See, that wasn't so hard," and drove off. We kept our smiles to ourselves. When the boss returned that afternoon, he was horrified. The rain had washed the wet paint down the building, leaving paint streaks dripping onto the rest of the mural. Basically, the whole mural, 3 weeks worth of work, was ruined. We noticed him staring slack-jawed, but we just kept painting. Then he called us down and lost it on us. When asked, "What were you guys thinking?" my coworker replied, "Well, you were the one who told us to do it." My boss' face turned beet red. Then he asked, "Well, how are we going to fix this?" My coworker simply replied, "You mean, how are you going to fix it? We've decided to all quit." And indeed, we had while we were working in that rain. We packed up our tools as the boss went from yelling to begging to yelling again. We just ignored him. That was the last day that we were on site. I felt so relieved the moment I got home. The aftermath. I got a call a week later from my old boss. I was ready to tell him that I won't come back to work, but it turned out that he just wanted to check in on me. He apologized for what happened. He also told me that my new boss lost the contract and had to hand out the money to repaint the whole wall blank again so that another muralist can take over. The company is floundering now. The new boss can't find anyone to replace us, and he probably never will. What he didn't realize was that finding even one good muralist willing to work for a company is difficult, let alone a team. Most muralists are more than happy to self-employ. More importantly, not many people have the skills and patience, as well as physical abilities to create beautiful, large-scale artworks from great heights. I give it another few months before the company completely shuts down. My coworkers and I still keep in touch. They got a few mural projects in the work from clients that they knew during their time with the company. I help out now and then, and I'm still pretty burnt from the experience, so I think I'll look for other jobs for now. You want everything the same color? Give me a day or two. Way back when I lived in a student dormitory in a city in the Netherlands, this wasn't a US-style dorm. Each student had their own room, but we shared a shower, a toilet, and a kitchen. Between 16 people. Oh, joyful days. Anyhow, by the time I entered the flat, it was already 30 years old and falling to bits. So the student housing department decided to renovate the building, basically stripping it. We all got replacement rooms and a sum of money to buzz off without making a fuss. So far, so good. Cue my neighbor's exit. By contract, we had to leave the room as we found it. That meant seeing to it that all the power plugs worked and filling up all the holes you'd made from hanging posters and lamps on the wall. It had become something of a tradition to perform the latter task using toothpaste. It was mainly laziness, since proper toothpaste is a good deal more expensive than wall filler. Anywho, it's what most of us did. Except that my neighbor brushed her teeth with periodontax, which uses a sort of off-pink, adobe-ish color of paste, and stupidly used said brand to fill the holes in her wall. So come inspection time, the holes she had filled with it on a white wall stuck out like sore thumbs. After about a week, she received a letter stating that she needed to make sure the walls were uniformly the same color, or face a 1,000 guilder, about 800 euros in today's money, fine, plus the loss of her 300 guilder deposit, within 3 days. This is in spite of the fact that the rooms would be demolished shortly after, and that the student housing department was very lax when they actually had to do any repairs. After about 3 minutes of indignation, we threw together enough funds to visit the DIY store, armed with a tube of periodontics toothpaste, had a can of paint mixed with exactly that color, returned and repainted the entire room, everything in it, in solid periodontics pink. When the inspector showed up a week later, he just stood there flabbergasted while my neighbor shoved his own letter in his face. The relevant sentence about uniformity indicated in yellow marker. She never heard anything about it again. Karen loses it in my video game store. I work at a family-owned video game store in a big shopping strip at the beach. We're 80% retro stuff, but we always take modern games and consoles because they move quick, especially these days. I'm working my Tuesday opening shift, going as slow as weekday mornings usually do, when one of my favorite regulars, an old gentleman that loves talking movies with me, and a woman, who I'll be referring to as Country Karen due to her accent, come into the store within a minute or so of each other. I say hi to the regular. Country Karen comes to the counter. I'll tell him I'll be back once I'm done. Regular goes to check out our Blu-ray trades from the weekend. Country Karen starts to explain she bought 2 Switch lights for her nephews, not realizing they already had a regular Switch in their house. Says the kids lost the receipt, entirely her own fault for giving it to the kids, so she can't return it and wants to know what I can do for a cash trade-in. She seems a little frazzled, but I chalk it up to stress and annoyance at her situation, since she explains she just came in from being told no at Target. I take the Switch Lite and take it out of the box. It's about as factory new as it gets, with only a small tear on the box and a few kid-sized fingerprints on the screen I can wipe off. She says she just wants as much money back as she can at this point. I pull up the trade sheet to double-check our trade rates. A Switch Lite retails for $200. We normally sell used for $180 and give $100 store credit or $80 cash. Since this Switch Lite is basically factory new with the box, I decide to give her a bit of a deal. Me. Well, normally Switch Lites only trade for $80 cash, but I can do $110 for this because it's a popular color and it's in really good condition with a box. Karen.
What? That's so low. GameStop has a promotion and will give me $140 for it. Can't you do any better?
Normally, we try to beat GameStop's everything by at least 15%, but being corporate with more employees and less stock per store, they can get specials and promotions done we can't. Plus, we can only match them on trade value for newer consoles, due to the little profit we turn taking them at GameStop's prices. I explain this to Country Karen, and she goes from frazzled and a little impatient to, well, a Country Karen.
Wow, I thought you guys would be better than GameStop since you're a small business, but if you're going to nickel and dime me, I'll just go to them from now on.
I audibly scoff at the woman's rudeness and tell her good luck. Perk of working family-owned, I don't have to lie down and take crap behavior. She gives me a nasty look takes her Switch Lite back, and leaves the store. There's a couple in line behind her with a bag or two of game trades each by this point, so once she's gone, I start helping them. Regular brings up a few of our movie trades. All four of us start talking movies while I get the games done. Mornings on weekdays usually aren't too bad, but for some reason I had a huge line of nothing but boxes of trade-ins per person come in while I was helping the first two guys out, and I was the only employee in the store that day. I finished the second person's trade and excused myself from the movie talk to focus on powering through the new line of people. I'm about halfway done with the second box of absolute goldmine titles, SNES and Nintendo 64 games, when Country Karen returns looking very unhappy. I put on my best customer service smile and say, "Welcome back." She ignores me, cuts past the rest of the line. Karen:
I need to trade this now. I have to pick my nephews up from daycare and need the gas money. GameStop said their promotion is over.
Me: sorry to hear that, but I've got other customers I'm helping right now. You'll have to get in line.
I said I need to trade this now. They're out soon, and all this running around is going to make me late as it is.
I look at gentleman I'm helping, who shrugs and says he doesn't mind, then at the other four people in line with boxes or bags of trades in hand, patiently waiting their turns. The next person in line is watching and giving Country Karen the audacity of this jerk, face I've ever seen. Since it's one item and normally it only takes a minute, I tell Country Karen, fine, I'll ring her through quick. I suspend the current trade, take the light, double check it, then add it into the system and ask Country Karen for her ID, which she loudly sighs about and takes a minute digging through her purse. Next guy in line definitely isn't happy with her attitude, makes a comment to the woman he's with that Country Karen and I can't make out. Karen finally finds her ID and hands it over. I enter her info into our customer database, up the trade of the Switch Lite to 110 and tell her the total. Much to my surprise, she balks as if I've just really upset her and indignantly states,
You told me $139.99 earlier. I want the money you said I'd get the first time I came in here.
Me: no ma'am, I said 110 because it's…
No, you told me $139.99. I want the money you said I'd get the first time, or there's going to be an issue.
That's BS, since every single trade in our store rounds to a whole dollar amount. But Country Karen keeps insisting I told her what I'm assuming was the GameStop promotional trade price. At this point, both I and the next guy in line are done with Country Karen. He loudly sighs and says, "Come on, man." But Country Karen either can't hear him or doesn't care. I, on the other hand, give Country Karen another winning service smile. Sure, your trade will be $80 cash then. I can see the few brain cells left in Country Karen's wino head trying to process how the value has gone down instead of up.
That's less. I want the money.
At this point, she's yelling in the store, so I use my 8+ years of singing bass in church chorus to talk over her without sounding like I'm yelling back. Me: I told you normally Switch Lites sell for $80 cash, but that I'd cut you a deal for $110. If you want the amount I told you the first time, that's $80. My regular and one of the first two trades are still near the till, and they both pipe up to support me and say I did, in fact, give her those numbers. Country Karen, red in the face and realizing her mistake, starts to backpedal.
God, fine. Just give me the $110 so I can leave already.
Me: no ma'am, you were very firm about wanting the first amount, so it'll be $80 cash for the trade. Country Karen looks like she's about to explode before she checks the time on her phone and deflates.
Just give me the money.
Absolutely. I ring out her transaction for $80, make her sign the receipt saying she agrees to the trade, then loudly count out $80 cash and 20s for her, which she snatches off the counter and storms out of the store with, while the next guy in line is bent over the box of games in his arms, laughing his butt off. Entitled mom steals my iPad and demands I let her kid keep it. I work at a car dealership as a receptionist, one of my duties being greeting customers when they enter. I'm a professional artist on the side, and I've been busy with some commissions lately, so since it's not busy at the dealer, I started working on my iPad mini. It's old and I'm working on upgrading, but I currently can't afford to, so I live with it despite the battery life being really short, and I have to basically keep it plugged in at all times. During my lunch, I was in the waiting area doing more work when a kid, a girl no older than 4, came up and watched me work. This happens a lot when I draw in public, and usually the kids just ask a lot of questions. But this nice girl was very quiet and just had a look of amazement, so I let her be. Her mother, the entitled mom in this story, was nearby at a salesman's desk working on purchasing a new car, which is a long and no doubt boring process. The salesman working with her walked away, which at my dealership they do very often to retrieve paperwork, talk to the sales and finance managers, etc. She looks over at me and her kid and asks, "What are you looking at?" Her kid points at my screen and says, "She's painting puppies." I was working on Twitch emotes of a streamer's dog. I sort of show my screen to entitled mom, and then she asks her kid if she wants to draw. Watch as the girl says excitedly, "Yes." I expected entitled mom to pull out a paper and pencils, or at least ask if I can get some for her too, but she just looked at me expectantly. When I realized she was waiting for me to hand her my iPad, I said, "Oh, she can't use mine, but I can get her a notepad and pens." But apparently that wasn't good enough. She sighs and says, "Just let her draw a little bit. I'm almost done here anyway." Which I knew for a fact wasn't true. They were waiting on a bank approval for a loan, which can take anywhere between 5 to 30 minutes, and even then they'll be here longer for financing paperwork, detailing, etc. I start to explain that this is part of my work, and she scoffs, saying I'm just doodling puppies and it was selfish that I wouldn't let the nice girl doodle on my device too. Poor nice girl was just looking at her hands, looking quite embarrassed. I then pretended my lunch was over and got up to spend the rest of my lunch at my desk. I couldn't see her behind a huge truck on display, but I can hear her grumble to nice girl about who knows what. Whatever. I pretend like I didn't hear so I don't mess up this sale for my coworker. Sometime later, nature called me and I get up to go to the restroom. I left my iPad on my seat so it would stay plugged in, and I put a notepad over it to try to cover it up somehow. My desk is a wide crescent shape with no drawers to keep my things safe, so this was the best I could do to somewhat hide it. I was in the restroom no longer than 3 minutes, but when I got back, only my charger remained. My iPad and Apple Pencil were gone. I looked over to the lady who had her large purse suspiciously in her lap now instead of on the floor beside her chair like it was before. I was panicked because a lot of my work is on that iPad that I needed. I went to my sales manager and told him the situation. He told me he would take care of it, but to be patient for now. I went back to my desk full of anxiety and my stomach doing backflips. Sales manager went to the desk where entitled mom was to work out the deal. They're far enough that I can hear their voices, but not pinpoint what they're saying, but I did hear her eventually yell, "How dare you! I would never steal. Do you want to lose this sale?" I immediately got up and went over behind the lady so sales manager could see me, but she couldn't. He tells her he understands, but my iPad went missing and he wants to make sure no one currently in the building has it. That's when I remembered the Find My feature on all Apple products. My iPad was connected to the dealer's Wi-Fi, so I pulled out my iPhone and pressed play sound for my iPad. Her purse started dinging. She tried to play it off as if it's her ringtone, and sales manager stared at her, as if daring her to answer it. Thing is, with the play sound feature, if I keep pressing it, it will keep pinging. I made my presence known and told her to give my iPad back. That's when she stopped playing dumb and just said, "Just let nice girl have it. Her birthday is coming up, and I can't afford a present for her since I'm getting this car." Sales manager said he was happy to cancel the deal so she can instead buy a birthday present for her kid and to return my iPad or he'll call the police. She practically threw my iPad at me, where it hit me in the gut, and took nice girl from the waiting area to leave. Poor thing looked at me with the most apologetic look on her face before leaving with her mother. Sales manager might have helped me, but he's not exactly the nicest person. From now on, I'm not allowed to bring my iPad to the dealer. I have to either leave it in my car or leave it at home. Whatever. Entitled mom took my Apple Pencil with her since she left in a hurry, so I'm gonna stop by the Apple store after work to get a new one. But until then, I'm stuck with my pens and notepad. Edit. I got off work, and Apple Pencils cost like $120. The first generation. The one entitled mom took, I bought secondhand for $70. What on earth? Am I the jerk for cutting my son's college funds since he refuses to visit me? I, 38 male, have 3 kids, 18 son, 16 son, and 13 daughter. But one of them isn't my biological son, the one who's 16. I found out about this 3 years ago. It was a messy situation, so I ended up divorcing my wife and leaving. I moved to another city because I needed time to heal. I wasn't physically involved in my kids' life for 2 years, but I called them every day and talked to them. I also paid child support for the 3 of them. Here's where I know I did a terrible thing, and maybe that's why Alexander is mad at me and doesn't want to see me. When I called my kids, I only called Sophia and Raphael, who are 13 and 18, because I felt uncomfortable talking to Alexander. One day he was angry and grabbed the phone crying and said, "Don't you love me, Dad? Why are they more important to you?" I politely replied and said, "Honey, look, I love you, but I need some time to heal. I'm still your father and I'll be back soon." He knows I'm not his biological father. I talked to him through messages because I didn't feel completely comfortable doing a FaceTime. I moved back to my city last year with my new partner to settle down, and my kids, who are 13 and 18, came to visit me immediately. But Alexander didn't come, so I went to his mom to see what was going on, and I talked to him and also apologized for treating him the way I did, but he refused to come to my house and said that he only wanted to hang out with me, and we did that. When he found out my wife, he refused to come to my wedding, was pregnant, he told me not to visit him again. Then I found that his mom was seeing Alexander's biological father, so I thought that my son wanted a relationship with his biological dad instead. So even if it hurts, I respected his wishes until I found out that he rejects this guy. Raphael said that one day this guy was trying to spend time with him, but Alexander said, "Look, dude, no hard feelings, but don't try to force a fatherly role on me because you are not my dad and I already have one." So I decided to invite him again to live with me because my other 2 kids live with me 80% of the time and he's the only one who refuses. My daughter was born 6 days ago and he hasn't come to see his half-sister. So I called him and said that if he doesn't come to see me, I'll be cutting his college fund. He told me to buzz off and then hung up. My mom's saying that I'm being a jerk for threatening him that way. Am I the jerk? Seriously, I don't see the point of paying a college fund for a kid that doesn't even want to see me. You abandoned your son, who no doubt took this news as hard or harder than you did. You turned your back on him. Now you want him to dance like a trained monkey playing to your whims so he can have a future? You're the jerk. A very selfish jerk. Your poor, poor son. It's funny OP is upset that his son doesn't want to see him and thinks he deserves to be punished for that when he did the exact same thing and doesn't deserve to be punished. With that kind of flexible gymnastics, he might be the first person that can actually go forget himself. Seriously, OP thinks he, the grown man, deserves time to himself, but the 14, now 16-year-old kid doesn't get to take time and process his mom lying to him, his dad leaving him, his siblings being loved more than him, and a new shining of what he's not, his dad's biological kid. Mega super duper you're the jerk, and if it weren't so clear that your son still wants a relationship with you, I'd wish all your kids decided to go no contact with you. What an absolute jerk you are. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his son? Please let us know.
Yowza canowza. I can't wait to read the comments we get about this one.
Super extra spicy fried chicken. I used to work for a big local fast food chain in the Philippines called Jollibee. I worked as a dining crew there, and my job was to serve the customers. I was just fresh out of high school back then, around 2016. Our store operated from 6 a.m. to 12 midnight, and one day, right when we were about to close down for the day, a woman in her mid-20s came in with another girl. This woman was a bit tomboyish, and just looking at the way she moves, I can tell she was a hotshot. After she got her order, she and the girl she was with sat at the seat at the most isolated corner of the dining area. After a few minutes, her order came out and I served it to them. It was 1 spicy chicken and 1 classic chicken, both with rice and drinks. Just a bit of context, our spicy chicken is actually just your regular chicken sprinkled with very hot chili powder. The tomboy, who clearly is the one who ordered the spicy chicken for herself, took a look at the chicken, and with the most alpha male energy she could muster to impress the girl she was with, asked me to return the chicken to the kitchen and make it spicier. I just wanted things to be done so I could get back to cleaning, so I just took the chicken back to the kitchen and asked the fry man to add more spicy sprinkles to it. The PC, the one in control of the whole kitchen, interrupted and offered to make the chicken spicier instead. Apparently, when the tomboy made their order earlier, they were very rude to the cashier, which upset the PC because they acted really arrogantly. I guess this is where you cue the malicious compliance. The PC got a plate, put on some plastic hand gloves, placed the chicken on a new plate, and poured all the content of the shake can on the chicken. The chili sprinkle on the shake can was going to be disposed of after the shift ended anyways, so the manager who was watching everything didn't really say anything. The PC then proceeded to roll the chicken around on the bed of spicy sprinkle, and by the time he was finished, the chicken, which entered the kitchen with a golden brown color, was now reddish. It just looks like a lump of chili sprinkles. I brought the order back to the tomboy and her girl and left them be, and went out to clean the glass panels. It was near closing time, so I was in a hurry to do my cleaning. After about almost half an hour, I saw Tomboy leave. Her face was red, as if she had just had a fight with someone. There was no commotion, so I doubted that was actually the case. I went back inside to collect the dishes. When I got to their seat, I ended up laughing when I saw the tomboy's plate. On it was the breading of the chicken, some chewed up chicken that was spat back onto the plate, and a ton of chili sprinkles around the table. She clearly tried to shake off the excess chili powder, but wasn't too successful in doing so. The chicken was also only half eaten. Am I the jerk for insisting my daughter be called by her actual name? When my wife, 31 female, and I, 29 male, were trying to get pregnant, we had a deal that if we had a boy, she would get to choose the full name, and if we had a daughter, I would. I was fine with this deal, but we both had a veto in case we didn't like the name the other one had chosen. Once we got pregnant, my wife was completely sure that we're having a boy because a mother knows. Her entire family was convinced of it too. During baby shower, everything was blue and all the gifts were demanded to be masculine. Her mother had already started knitting things with the name my wife had chosen. Once the baby came, we saw that it was a girl, and I was ecstatic because although I wanted both a boy and a girl, I always imagined my firstborn to be a girl. My wife, though seemingly exhausted, was happy too. When I wrote the name in the birth certificate, I let her know I was using the name I had already run past her. Now, a year later, I come home from work and I find my mother-in-law and wife there talking about my daughter, only they're using another name. When I inquired who they were talking about, they kinda went deer in headlights and blurted that they were talking about our daughter. When I asked why they were using another name, my mother-in-law said because that's what we decided to name her. Then she went on a rant about how it's unfair that I chose the name and how it's completely unsuitable for her, etc. I was shocked because this was the first time anyone had claimed any objections to the name. So now I realize that the reason my daughter has trouble recognizing her name is because we've been using two different names the entire time. My wife later came to me suggesting that we officially get her name changed, but I said no and told her we are not doing that and she needs to stop. This led to a fight about how unsupportive I am and stole her right to name the kid she gave birth to. I told her that the opportunity to veto any name is long gone and that she can't expect me to support something this stupid. Here's the worst part. I could be convinced to change the first name, but the one she wants is a very odd feminine version of the name she wanted for her son. Imagine using a female version of the name Drake or Thomas. She got angry and left both my daughter and I and went to her parents. Her entire family, except my father-in-law, is calling me controlling and how it's unfair I chose the entire name and made it all about myself. Honestly, this is so out of left field and creepy that I'm considering divorce. My parents and friends said they understand why I'm upset, but should come to a compromise and change the name to something we both like and that divorce is overdoing it. But I don't think so. I feel it in my gut that she may be trying to recreate this son. If she can use a different name to address her for a year, what else has she been doing? So Reddit, am I the jerk for not compromising with our daughter's name? Not the jerk. It is creepy. Your wife is in cahoots with your mother-in-law over the name, and they didn't bother to tell you anything. It's a big betrayal. And yes, you should be upset, because it speaks of their character, and from the sounds of it, they don't have a good character. You're the father. Your mother-in-law is not the parent. Any name discussion should be between you and your wife, and you both need to be in agreement. Your wife is 100% wrong for going behind your back, and your mother-in-law is way out of line. But seriously, people, stop with the whole, I get to name this baby and you get to name that baby thing. It's dumb and it leads to resentment. Work together to find a name you both like. If you can't do that much, you shouldn't be parenting together. Both parents should be able to like their kid's name. Honestly, I feel like this is a hill to die on, not the jerk. How is it controlling and unfair to insist that your daughter's name is her name? You not only had an agreement that she'd choose a boy's name and you choose the girl's, but that you both had veto power. She had every opportunity to have input into the name. The only person being controlling is the one trying to insist that 12 months later, she gets to change your daughter's name to basically the boy's name she had chosen. That's weird and mildly disturbing. Not the jerk, But OP, I would check with your daughter's medical records and with her doctor's office to make sure that her legal name is on them, not her fictitious made-up name from your wife, or this could cause issues in the future. If your daughter has a sitter, do the same. Be sure to make sure that everyone knows that your daughter's name is the originally chosen one. If you do divorce, have your lawyer put it somewhere in writing that your wife and her insane family must use your daughter's legal name, the one chosen at birth, when she has custody of your daughter. Otherwise, suffer legal consequences. She is confusing your daughter. She is not a puppy she can just rename on a whim. Good luck. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Wouldn't it be nice if there were a way to detect a person's crazy level before having a baby with them?
Automated my useless boss out of her job. This happened a few years ago. I was a data and reporting analyst and did all the ad hoc reports for the company. My boss, we'll call her Carrie, was a useless. She was one of the people that was always late, left early, and took days off at short notice. The one thing of value she did was all the regular reports, sales, revenue, etc. We suspected she got away with it because she was having an affair with her boss. We'll call him Stuart. Our CEO was a fairly decent bloke. He had looked for ways to cut costs and would pay regular bonuses for the best cost-saving initiatives. Carrie was very keen to submit ideas and encouraged us all to automate our tasks so she could try and take the credit for the savings. On one of her days, which coincidentally Stuart was sick as well, the CEO was desperate for the sales report my boss does. I said I'd give it a look and see if I could get it done. Normally, she'd spend 2 to 3 days doing it each week, but the CEO wanted it that afternoon. A quick inspection of the data showed it would quite easily be automated, so I knocked up the necessary script and got it over to the CEO, who was super impressed that not only had I got it done in a couple of hours, but also that it could be updated whenever he needed it. He asked if I could also look at the revenue, churn, and a couple other reports. Over that afternoon, I automated everything my boss did. Both Carrie and Stuart were back in the next day, but were immediately summoned to the CEO's office before being suspended and sent home. Turns out the CEO knew they were having an affair, and all the times they were sick or late or had to leave early was so that they could sneak off and hook up. He had not done anything about it because how important these reports were. Now they were automated, and he was going to get them suspended and later fired for gross misconduct for all the time they had taken off. I also got a nice bonus out of it. Am I the jerk for disinviting my siblings from my wedding? There's me, 25 female, sister, 27, and brother, 28, involved here. We were raised together, and until 2019, we believed we were a biological family. Then we found out that our dad wasn't our biological dad, which even he didn't know. It turned out my older siblings shared a biological dad, but I had a different one. We were also first cousins because their biological dad and my biological dad were brothers. Dad left our mom, hurt, betrayed, and overall disgusted that she had lied to him for 2 decades. I was equally mad that she lied and hurt my dad. My siblings were less willing to cut her off, but their relationship strained majorly. Dad moved in with me and my then boyfriend, now fiance, and lockdown hit. At this point, all 3 of us agreed he was dad no matter what, and there was nothing that could change that. I meant it. They didn't. They found their biological father, and mine by extension, and have decided that he is now real dad, and that our dad is just a stepdad. My brother has even corrected his 2 daughters who call dad grandpa into saying he's step-grandpa, and that's what they call him now, while biological gets called grandpa. It broke my dad's heart, and he decided it was too much for him to accept. This is after talks between them where he was essentially told to know his place, stay in his lane, and demoted with the clear message being nothing would change. I'm so upset with them. They've tried to push me to meet my real dad and have told me it's okay to go back on what we said. Initially, they were invited to my wedding, but with this whole mess, I told them they were no longer welcome and I did not want them to show up. They told me that just because they have a relationship with their real dad doesn't change things between us. I told them it does. That if dad isn't our real dad after everything he's done for us, then we're not real siblings, because technically we are half siblings and cousins. That my dad is still my dad 100%, and biology is meaningless to me. And so it was the best for them not to come, because I no longer wanted them there. What I said hurt them. My sister-in-law, married to my brother, told me that I was a jerk for throwing half in their faces and cutting them from my wedding like we haven't been siblings our whole lives. I think that's almost more annoying to me because that's our dad. But he can be treated like this and discarded like he's nothing? Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your dad is lucky to have a daughter like you. Congrats on the wedding. I cannot imagine exiling and belittling the man who lovingly raised me for decades for a man that would repeatedly get with his own brother's wife and then refuse to acknowledge his biological kids for their entire childhood. Funny how the monster that intentionally created this situation is still called Mom. Not the jerk. I hope you and your dad have a blast at the wedding. Edit. I misread, OP. The affair partners were brothers. You and your dad deserve so much better than this pile of jerks. OP. Their biological father isn't related to my dad. Their biological dad is related to my biological dad. They were the brothers. This is America. My amazing wife bought a pogo pass for the family. This allows our family of 5, sometimes 7, to go to many events on the cheap. Last night, we saw the Rattlers play against the IFL's newest team, the Frisco Fighters. Great game. One that a certain couple didn't get to see, thanks to some, presumably, malicious compliance on behalf of the ticket scanner. We were waiting in line, waiting for our tickets to scan. Noticed a couple in front of us getting very fidgety with their middle school twins, yelling at them to pull up the tickets on their phone. They made it a race, as if everything was a competition to these girls. Twin 2 wins. Lost that bet with my wife, just in time to get scanned. All that, and the man scanning didn't take his magic wand and scan their phone, just looked and nodded them through, about ready to move on to us. But alas, it was not to be. Mom starts tripping, telling the young ticket scanner, "But you didn't scan us." He replies, "Ma'am, you're good to go." He then turns back to us to scan our tickets that were also readied by our kid, saying as he makes eye contact with us, "Hey man, some people don't get it. If I say you're good to go, you are. Got no problem with me, you're problem free." He said it so rhythmically that nothing I could write could do it justice. Just how melodically he almost sang this utterance, like a catchphrase. All of a sudden, the lady shouts while whispering, probably because security is right there.
This is America. For all of our safety, I demand you scan each of our tickets.
Enter malicious compliance by the young ticket scanner as he tells us, "Watch this." He takes the scanner, asks the crazy "This is America" lady, "Are you sure?"
Positive. You know that.
She was about to ramble on when the ticket suddenly made a weird noise, the noise of rejection. Ticket scanner says in an overly emphatic, sad voice, "Sorry, ma'am. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but this ticket is for our next home game. See the date?" Crazy lady replies,
You've got to be kidding me.
and she turned to her disappointed-looking family and disappeared into a crowd of people I could care less about. Ticket scanner turns to me and says, to my wife most likely, and kind of his coworkers and the general public, "I saw that date, saw that different helmet color. I tried to help them out, man. No one wants to listen. No one cooperating." Smiling all the way, shrugs in unison. Nice to see malicious compliance secondhand. Am I the jerk for not paying for my landlord's damaged car after he rammed his car into mine? I live in my landlord's home, renting part of it. Anyways, the suite came with one parking spot. The parking spot that he advertised. This tiny squeeze right next to 2 of his cars parked in front of his 2-car garage. I live in Vancouver, so landlords can get away with offering the minimum and expect the maximum in rent. But okay, I could carefully fit my tiny coupe in. And I had for 3 months without incident. Well, as I was trying to leave the house yesterday morning, I witnessed my landlord trying to back his F-350 into its usual spot next to my car, except he missed and rammed my car instead. He climbs out of his truck, looks at me, and loses it, telling me that because I had my car there, I was at fault, that my car being there made for reckless parking, and he had no option but to get me. Mind you, this was the spot he advertised, and I had been parking like he directed me to. I was in the very same spot earlier that morning than he was able to get out of, so it clearly wasn't impossible. I told him no, that he hit my car, and that he was the one who sanctioned a parking spot there, and that I would be happy to settle this without involving insurance if he'd like to pay out of pocket to sort out my car. He of course chuckled at me, called me an idiot, and told me to expect a bill in the mail tomorrow. It should be important to note that I am a tiny, quiet, and shy woman, and I assumed he thought I'd back down. Yeah, no. I said, nope, you give me no option except to call the police. So I quickly took photos, all while this man was suddenly very angry and losing it on me. I quickly went into my suite, locked the doors, called the police. Remembered I still had screenshots of the advertised rental suite and photos of the landlord's sanctioned parking space. Gave it all to the police. It was a lot. I've never spoken to the police before. This morning, he sent me a ton of texts calling me names, that I was costing him a ton of money, etc. I know I'm in the right legally, but am I the jerk for how I went about it? Edit. His wife got in on the action this evening, telling me the costs of repair will severely affect their ability to raise their baby due in 2 months. I realize now that's not my problem. Thank you for all the comments and advice. Not the jerk. He sounds like a jerk, and you should probably move. Easier said than done in the most expensive housing market in the country. Not the jerk. Sounds like you did the only thing that you could and what you needed to do to ensure your safety. That said, this man has keys to your apartment, so I would consider moving ASAP. I know that's not as easy as I make it sound, but please do what you can to be safe. This guy doesn't sound reasonable. Am I the jerk for changing my mind about letting my daughter go on a trip with her boyfriend? I, 48 male, am the father to 2 daughters, Elise, 19 female, and Mia, 16 female. I love them both more than anything, but they are very different people. Elise graduated a year early from high school 2 years ago with enough credits to take off a year from college. So she'll be graduating next year. It's complicated, I know. She has been dating the same boy since they were both 17, and they made it work long distance. I'll admit, she is very trustworthy, reliable, and doesn't ask for much. Very hardworking and never got in trouble in school. All around good kid. Mia is a bit of a different story. She is incredible, very smart, but hasn't been the easiest in high school. Got suspended twice in her freshman and sophomore year for doing stupid stuff, and has had several boyfriends over the last year. Made some poor decisions with a few of them, etc. Now she's dating a guy who is 19 and dropped out of college last year. I love her no matter what, but I'm not blind to her poor decision making. Since the school year ended, Elise came back home. She has a job at a hospital lined up for the summer, but doesn't start for another week, and her boyfriend asked her last month if she wanted to go on a road trip across the US with him, which was last week. Elise asked, and we were hesitant, but she presented us with detailed travel plans, so we said they could go. The problem came up on Tuesday last week after Elise left Monday. I was with Mia, and she mentioned how excited she was to go on a trip with her boyfriend. I figured she meant in a couple of years, but she told me they were looking to travel together in early July for a few weeks. I have some problems with this. To be frank, I think Mia is too young and too reckless to go on a trip like that. For legal reasons, she doesn't have an active license, so she would be relying on this kid she's only known for a little while to get around. When I told her that I wouldn't be okay with her going on a trip, she got very angry and told me it was unfair that I allowed Elise to go, but wouldn't let her. After thinking about it, I realized I was setting a dangerous precedent in letting Elise go. On Wednesday, about a quarter of the way through their trip, I told Elise she had to come home. She resisted it, but I told her she had to, so she came home on Thursday. I have never seen her this upset. I tried to explain to her that this is the only way I can make it fair since I won't let Mia go. She told me that it may be equal, but it's not fair because she earned this trip and her sister didn't. My wife feels like I punished Elise for her sister's mistakes by making her come home instead of just telling Mia no. I just wanted to make it fair for both of my daughters so that one of them doesn't get more than the other. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You absolutely punished Elise because you wanted to be fair to Mia. Life is not fair, and you need to teach that to your kid instead of bringing your other kid into it. Mia needs to realize that she can't do everything her older sister does, with age being a huge factor in this. You need to explain to Mia why Elise was able to go. One is 19 and able to move out and could go to college across the country. She's a legal adult and able to make her own decisions, whereas your other is 16 and can't make any big decisions without you. Agreed. OP, your post outlines all the reasons that you were okay with Elise going on her trip and why Mia couldn't. Then you rescind permission mid-trip, which is so much more cruel than just saying no in the first place because you don't want Mia to go on one. Ergo, instead of parenting, to avoid conflict with Mia, you punished Elise. Your wife was right. Rescinding permission while on a pre-approved trip is not the same as not letting Mia go either. So even if Elise was the same age, making the same poor decisions as Mia, this still wouldn't be fair treatment for both. You've just made Mia the most powerful and influential individual in your family unit. The backlash from that decision is going to be so much greater than dealing with her temper tantrum when she's not allowed to go. Also, you're the jerk for making unilateral decisions about your kids without your wife's input. Well, what do you think? Is Opie a jerk for the way he handled this or not? Please let us know.
All these years of being a parent, you'd think he'd at least have figured some of this stuff out by now.
Would I be the jerk if I decide to leave my estate to a charity and not my only kid? My wife and I are both getting old, and we've been having this discussion lately about what we will do with our estate. My wife is firmly against leaving anything to our son, while I'm on the fence. I feel awful about not leaving him anything, but at the same time, I don't feel any connection with him anymore. A little backstory. Our son is in his mid-30s and lives somewhere else. Where? I have no idea. Last time we heard from him was 3 years ago, and he had just moved somewhere in Europe. Again, he refused to tell us where. About 2 years before that, he had a kid whom he has never allowed us to meet. He simply doesn't want a relationship with me or his mother. It has broken our hearts and something we will struggle with almost daily. My wife especially wanted a grandchild, and it hurts her that my son won't let her meet him. The reason he's so cold with us is because back in his early 20s, he got in financial issues and basically bled us dry. We tried hard, but we couldn't financially do it anymore. This upset him and led him to basically tell us to buzz off and to never contact him again. He said he couldn't wait for us to pass on so that he could sell the house. I'm not sure how he's doing or if he's even alive. We have zero contact with him, nor does anyone else we know. All we know is he's married, has at least one kid, and was living in Europe. We're planning our will and are currently having our estate going to a charity. Does this make me a jerk or am I justified? My daughter demands I raise her babies, but I want to retire in peace. I, 58 female, and my husband, Rob, who's 61, have 2 kids, Erica, who's 35, and Mike, who's 30. Both kids are married, but Erica and her husband, Steve, who's 38, live nearby us, and this issue concerns them. They work full-time and they have 2 kids, who are 5 and 4 years old. 5 years ago, my daughter asked my husband and me if we would be willing to become their full-time childcare so she could continue to work and afford their comfortable life. We agreed, but we didn't discuss much more than watching the baby and their expectations. I was a teacher and retired 2 years before I could take my pension, so my husband continued to work, and we made a few sacrifices like vacations and adding to our savings, but we were able to make it work so I could take my full pension at 55 and my husband retired a year later. Our arrangement worked and we enjoyed having the kids, except by year 3, 2020, we started to feel like they were taking advantage of our help. In 2020, during the lockdown, they both were working from home. They expected us to keep the kids all day, and we wanted to split time with them since their preschool and daycare was closed. We settled on 2 with them and 3 with us, and my son-in-law complained about it pretty much every day. Things got better when the kids were able to go back to school. Fast forward to year 4, 2021, we have a bit of a blow-up over kindergarten. My daughter did not want her 5-year-old son to start school in the unknown, but I insisted that he needed to go because I needed the break. I also asked for her 4-year-old to spend more time at the preschool and daycare program. Son-in-law complained about the cost, but I pushed anyway. They relented, and then this past spring, son-in-law pushed for us to take the kids for a week so they could go on a vacation. We said they had to take the kids, and he said, "We can't afford it." No one went on vacation. Maybe that's too much background, but I feel like the context is important for what I said. My daughter and I were casually having a conversation the other day, and she mentions that she had a doctor's appointment and tests. I asked if everything was okay, and she said Steve and her were trying for baby number 3. I asked her what her childcare plan was, and she looked at me like I was crazy and said us. I said that it would have been nice if she had told me this before trying for another baby. She said it's none of my business. I said it is if I'm providing 5 more years of babysitting. I then told her that we were not a viable childcare option for a new baby and begged her to reconsider. Her 4-year-old is going off to kindergarten. We feel like we're getting our days back to some extent and refuse to start all over again with an infant. Erica said we are making her choose between her dream of having 3 kids and financial stability. I argued that she has 2 beautiful kids already and they are financially stable. They shouldn't ruin that with another baby. I might be the jerk because Erica feels like we should have told her sooner. I feel like I'm not because I never agreed to a lifetime of raising their kids. Edit. We will continue to watch our 2 grandkids after school and during the summer as this is what we have agreed to and we enjoy it. School provides a nice break for us and then we do fun things with the kids in the summer. We just don't want to start over again with another baby. Edit 2. Just to add a bit more context, and I want to answer some of the comments I'm seeing a lot. We are not paid and we didn't ask to be. I retired early, but would have stayed longer if we didn't watch our grandkids. I probably would have put in another 5 years or so because I loved my job, so putting those 5 years into helping my daughter and grandkids wasn't a problem. My husband and I did a good job of preparing for retirement and felt that we could swing it. We do take time for ourselves. We require 5 weeks a year at a minimum to travel, visit our son or other family. We settled on 5 because our daughter gets 3 weeks of vacation a year and son-in-law gets 2. At first, son-in-law complained that him and my daughter would never get a vacation together. We said that they would just simply have to arrange other care options if they want time together, so we could still have our 5 weeks. We do hold them to this, and one time in the past 5 years, his parents came down to stay with them and watch the kids during that week we were away. In terms of telling her to not have another baby, I was trying to make her see everything she does have and to focus less on what she doesn't have. Lastly, my daughter and son-in-law have plenty of money and are responsible when it comes to costs. If anything, my son-in-law is cheap, so I think their version of stability and many others would be very different. Not the jerk. Red flags should have been raised when they wanted to go on holiday without their kids at this age. Parenting is not something you take a break from, especially at 4 or 5 years old. They sound very unprepared to be parents at all, let alone for 3 kids. Edit. For clarity, by taking a break, I meant taking prolonged vacations. Of course, it's fine to occasionally drop your kids off at your parents' for a gathering or one night of enjoying life. Plenty of people take a break from their kids by leaving them with grandparents for a weekend, but the grandparents have to agree to it first. They wanted to leave their kids for a week when the grandparents already have the kids every day full-time? Why would the parents expect a break, but not want the grandparents to have one? Yes, parents are allowed to want a vacation away from their kids. 7 to 10 days is minuscule compared to the 365 days a year. Sure, if this was every month, then that would be neglectful. But a 1-week trip every couple of years without kids isn't going to ruin anyone's life, nor does it show that parents don't care about their kids. The key is ensuring you have safe, reliable, and comfortable care from individuals who happily agree to watch your kids for the entire time away. As a general note, parents don't stop being individuals when they become parents. It's a toxic and unsustainable mindset that parents should never be allowed to want or plan things without their kids. As long as their kids are well cared for, loved, and there is adequate care for the times parents aren't around, then this is a non-issue. OP is not the jerk for telling your daughter you won't watch another kid. Choosing to have a kid means thinking about childcare. A parent who dumps their kid off on someone else at literally every opportunity isn't a parent. And a week vacation from the kids wouldn't be an issue if they were the ones taking care of them full time. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter and son-in-law? Please let us know.
Don't you just love it when parents think it's your duty to watch their kids for them for free?
When my parents were thrown out of a kid's birthday party because they asked the stupidest thing imaginable. This happened, I think, when my brother was around 6 to 7 years old. A neighbor boy down the street was having his birthday party, and my brother got invited because they were sort of friends, but probably because they knew my parents would bring a gift. And they did. Don't remember what it was though, nor do I really care. My parents dragged me along to this party, even though I would have rather stayed home and played video games. I was bored and sitting down almost the entire time, so I got to witness pretty much the whole situation. It started when my brother was caught picking up the gifts off the table and shaking them. The mother of the birthday boy told him to stop, and my parents tried to defend my brother and say he was harmless. But the lady knew what my brother was really like and had my parents move him away from the presents. There were some games that the kids were playing. Don't remember what they were, but I do remember my brother tried to be the center of attention as much as possible. With each game, the birthday boy got first pick and first turn on all of them because it was his birthday. But my brother freaked out because he didn't get to go first. And my parents did ask the birthday boy's mother if my brother could get the first pick in turns. And the lady not only refused, but told my parents to get my brother under control or we'd all be asked to leave. Then came time for the cake. The mother lit the candles for the birthday boy and the adults started singing the happy birthday song. They only got as far as singing the birthday boy's name in the song before my brother burst into a tantrum on the table. He grabbed the side of the table and started trying to shake it. My parents had to hold my brother back for a moment, and then I saw my mother go up and talk to the mother of the birthday boy again about something, and the poor lady looked positively disgusted, and I learned later that she had asked her to let my brother blow out the candles first, and then they could redo it. The lady told my mother that it would be best if we left, and then they went back to trying to redo the birthday song. Well, my brother couldn't take it and ran to the table and shoved the whole cake right at the birthday boy. I mean, he used his arm to literally clothesline the cake and heave it right at the birthday boy. The whole room was silent for a few seconds, and then a bunch of the kids started laughing. Then the birthday boy started crying, and all the adults were mortified, except for my parents. My mother just started hugging my brother tightly and acting like a Karen by saying this all could have been prevented if they had just let my brother blow out the candles first. The mother of the birthday boy was cleaning up chocolate cake off her son and screamed at my parents to get out. The other kids there started crying because it had finally hit them now that there was no cake. My mother started dragging my brother out, but he broke free of her and then pushed over the table with all the presents on it. I grabbed him and held him still until my parents got him. I apologized profusely to the mother of the birthday boy and said I wasn't on my parents' side in this matter. Yeah, that's right. Little 12-year-old me had to apologize for my own parents. My dad yelled at me to get moving or I could walk home. I said I'd walk. It was literally a quarter mile down the street. I stayed and helped clean up the mess my brother made. The lady thanked me and said that I was a good egg, but my brother was just rotten. Someone went out and got another cake while the birthday boy had to take a shower because it was covered in cake. All of the mess was cleaned up and they redid the birthday song. After the party was over, the mother of the birthday boy wrote something on a piece of paper. It was a handwritten invoice to my parents for the destroyed cake, along with a written threat to call police, as someone there with a camera caught everything. I handed the invoice to my parents, and they really didn't look happy when they read it. Then they gave me the cash and told me to take it back to the lady. So I did. And that was pretty much it. Neither that kid or his family ever associated with my brother or my parents ever again. But the messed up thing is that at another birthday party months later, the same situation nearly repeated entirely. My mother asked the parents to let my brother blow out the candles first, gave stupid excuses as to why, and they outright refused, and my mother acted like a total Karen. My brother tried to knock down the cake. I was on guard and intercepted him. Then we were told to leave. It was after that my brother was no longer invited to birthday parties that were not relatives. And then on my next birthday in that same year when I turned 13, my parents tried to get me to let my brother blow out my candles, and my aunt tore into them for that. It was then, I guess, that my parents decided that if I couldn't share, then next year I shouldn't even have a party at all. Would I be the jerk if I didn't go to my brother's wedding over a bridesmaid dress? I'm currently in medical school and I live across the country from my brother and family. I was surprised when his fiancée asked me to be a bridesmaid because I barely know her, but she wants to have all the siblings in the wedding. I made it clear that their wedding was during my final exam week, and while I was able to get an accommodation to take my last 2 exams early, I still wouldn't be able to help much with planning or be present at things like a bachelorette party or a bridal shower. She said that was fine. It would mostly just be to have an even number of bridesmaids to groomsmen and for the pictures. There's a group chat that was created months ago that I would read through every couple of days to get updates on things I needed to do, namely to order a bridesmaid dress. Links were sent with 3 styles to choose from, and we would be updated on colors later. So a couple of weeks go by and I ask what color to order. Bride says she's still thinking about it. Couple more weeks go by and she's still thinking. Then a couple more weeks. You get the idea. Now it's at the point that if I don't order this dress in a couple of days, it won't be here in time. So I ask on Saturday what color. No response in the group chat to me. I asked again yesterday, Sunday, what color do I need to order? Then I'm flooded with messages lambasting me for not ordering a dress yet, from her sisters and my sister and her. My sister called me, told me to get my crap together and order a dress already because my lack of being prepared is causing the bride intense anxiety because she doesn't think my dress will be here on time for the wedding now. She texted me this morning, "Don't forget to order your dress. Love you," with smiling and kissing emojis. Still, no one has told me what color. I've scoured the group chat for a mention of dress colors or an image of a dress, but only the maid of honor sent a photo of her dress, and I don't even know if she has a special color. There's thousands of messages, so it's not simple to find anything. Everyone else can meet in person, so I assume the decision on color was relayed in person. I can't tell if I'm being purposefully excluded. About an hour ago, my brother called me, pleading with me to work things out with the bride because she's panicking about me. I tried to explain this to him, and he told me he doesn't care. It's a petty issue, and since I'm not there for anything else, this is the least I can do, because the bride thinks I don't like her because I wouldn't come to anything. He's taking her side. They know I'm in medical school. I have literally no say in my schedule, and I'm on the other side of the country 5.5 hours by plane. I'm fed up with them and contemplating telling my instructors the wedding was moved and I will take my exams at the regular time. I'd have more time to study that way anyway. I haven't told anyone in my family I'm considering doing this. Would I be the jerk? Update. I called my mother and asked her what color the bridesmaid dresses were. She said lavender. The only color option on the website that I would call lavender are named pearly lilac, periwinkle, and orchid purple. I texted the maid of honor, the bride's sister, to ask what dress color and got a multi-paragraph long lecture about not having ordered my dress yet. Basically, they're trying so hard to accommodate me being across the country by including me in the group chat. She said she didn't remember the shade name, but it's a dusty purple, then sent a blurry picture of a wrinkled order confirmation. The shade name was mulberry. On the dress website, that is a darker wine, kind of purple color. I told her this, and she said to order the lighter dusty purple color. I sent her a screenshot with a list of shade names and asked, which of these? She said she didn't know because everyone ordered their dress so long ago, and asked for pictures of the dresses in different shades from the website. So I sent screenshots of all the light purple colors. No response for a while, so I called her on the phone, which she was upset about because it's past 10 p.m. over there now. Her response was, "Look, I don't care what your problem is with me and my sister, but if you want to stay in good standing with this family, you need to get your ducks lined up, girly." I ignored the lecture comments and I asked, "What color?" Her response, "Light purple." Me, "Of the three I sent, which one is it?" "I don't remember. I'll have to ask one of the other bridesmaids for her receipt. I'll get back to you." I called my second brother, the one not getting married. He said they're pulling similar things with him, and he feels like he was deliberately given the wrong dates for the bachelor party by the best man, the bride's brother, so that he would miss it. He inadvertently learned about the changed date the morning of, and when he asked the best man, he told him it must have slipped his mind to tell him, then joked that he wouldn't have missed much since he probably won't enjoy any of the festivities anyway. I don't understand why they can't just tell you what color to order. Not the jerk, this is weird. It could be the bride's passive-aggressive way of getting unknown sister out of the bridal party and still look like the good guy. ETA. Yup, her edit makes it clear. I would send one last message, short and sweet. I have not been told what color dress to order. If I don't hear back by tonight, the dress won't arrive and I will have to withdraw. Hope to hear from you. Don't let the VP know we are over budget. Several years ago, I worked in the purchasing department of a large semiconductor company in the US. Mostly, I handled all the non-production purchases and contracts, like office equipment, building management, travel contracts, that sort of stuff. But my biggest role was negotiating and approving temp staffing contracts for our US factories. One day, a director, we'll call him Bill, sends me a request for $150,000 for temp workers at a small facility in the middle of nowhere in Florida. The news was that a couple of local businesses had closed, and he had this great idea to save the company money by moving some production down there and snatching up those now desperate workers on the cheap. It seemed like a bit of a dumb idea at the time, but it was clearly his pet project, and $150,000 was within his right to spend without additional approval, so I rubber-stamped it and off he went. I hadn't had much interaction with Bill, but he was a pompous jerk, so I was glad to get rid of him. Now, it's important to this story to understand that our company's finance were super tightly controlled. Not a bad thing, but if you wanted to spend $1 over your role's limit, you better have your supervisor's signature in triplicate. Directors like Bill could spend up to $250,000, VPs $500,000, and anything over $500,000 had to go all the way up to our CEO for approval. About 3 months later, the trouble starts when Bill suddenly turns back up asking for more money. Turns out, rural Florida doesn't have a lot of people with the skills to work in an industrial clean room, and the people who do don't come cheap. The money that was supposed to last a year is already gone, but Bill is certain that he just needs a little more time and asks me to approve another $250,000 without telling our VP, his boss. I straight up refuse since it's my literal job to stop this, but Bill, being God's gift to the company, throws an absolute fit. It got ugly, and long story short, my boss directly ordered me to approve Bill's money without escalating it. I got this all in writing since it was sketchy and absolutely something I could get fired for. Finally, Bill's gone and I don't have to see his smug, short, balding head anymore. Or so I thought. Having disrespected the great and powerful Bill, I was now the target of his displeasure. For the next 4 months, I get at least 3 emails or phone calls a day from him or his secretary about something they don't like about the building, the landscaping, the guy who brings the bottled water, the snack selection in the machine, the equipment in the sea-level gym, on and on. I'm getting openly berated for these things that have nothing to do with me, but I'm stuck having to deal with them because my boss keeps caving to Bill's whims, and none of my paperwork is getting past his office either. I manage the purchasing for 12 facilities in the US and Europe, but if it needs his signature, I've got to personally bring it to him and stand there while he reviews it or he's refusing to sign. It was somewhere between humiliating and infuriating, and I increasingly wished he'd fall down a staircase. After months of this, finally, my chance for malicious compliance arrived. Shockingly, Bill hasn't managed to turn his pet project around, and what do you know? He needs $250,000 to get him through the year. I sign off, add the money to the purchase order, which now totals a cool $650,000, and shoot off an email to both him and my boss to remind them that this won't be shown to the VP. Then I print everything out, including the direct order not to show it to the VP, and march over to the CEO's office for him to sign. After all, it was now over the $500,000 required limit, and Bill never asked for him not to see it. All heck broke loose when they realized Bill's little project was $500,000 over budget. He didn't lose his job, but he refused to speak to me after that, which was exactly what I wanted. The Florida project was scrapped and was retasked to making basic electrical components. My boss was initially upset, but once he realized my insistence on getting Bill's order in writing had probably saved both of us, the whole thing went away. I was there for another year, and thankfully Bill never made an appearance at my office ever again. Am I the jerk for not letting my parents move in with me because I don't want to give up my pet's room? I, 37 female, am not close with my parents, who are 65 and 67. One of several reasons is their control, and I always hated that. Even living alone, they wanted to control, and it took several years of therapy to almost completely cut them out of my life, and I've lived in peace for 7 years. I don't intend to have kids. I don't intend to get married and live together, even dating. So my expenses are with me and my 4 pets, 2 dogs and 2 cats. They live a life of luxury, honestly, because I have a job that pays well. I have a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. The 2 suites I used for bedroom and office. The spare room is for my pets. The entire room is modified, several things on the wall for the cats, beds, toys, a door that leads to the backyard. I like to sleep completely alone and in peace, which has already proved ineffective when sleeping with all of them. My parents only visited my house once, and before my pets. The oldest is 4 years old. So really at the time, there was an empty room. Last week, my parents called me saying they lost their house, financed and delayed a lot of installments, and asked if they could come stay in the spare room. I said that only the living room would be available. They could sleep on the floor, mattress, or sofa, very spacious and comfortable, as the free room became my pet's room. They started to get angry, saying that pets could sleep in the living room instead of them, and that it's extremely disrespectful to offer parents, even worse, elderly people, to sleep in the living room on the floor or sofa when the pets could do it, in addition to complaints about my lifestyle and the fact that I have a pet room. I got angry and said my house was not open to them. Since then, I've been being bombarded by their messages saying that they're in a hotel, spending what they shouldn't, and next week they'll have to go to a shelter because I uninvited them and preferred my pets over not leaving them homeless. Other relatives couldn't help, and they didn't bother either because they know how much of a pain my parents are. I already blocked them, but would like an outside opinion. Am I the jerk? Extra. I don't help them financially, as I've been the target of emotional blackmail in the past because of it, and would rather it not happen again. Not the jerk. I have a feeling that if you let them stay in the living room for a week, they'll still be there a year from now. We'll be reading a post about how you had to move out of your house and buy a new house for yourself just to get away from your parents. It's hard not to feel some pressure here, but it's your life. They did this to themselves, and they had to work hard to do it. Think about all the missed opportunities they had to prevent this from happening. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you give the room to your parents or let your pets keep using it? Please let us know.
I'd put up a tent for mom and dad in the backyard.
My boss won't let us have last orders. I'm in the UK, in a popular tourist destination. Our restaurant is also a farm shop kind of thing, just off a busy road, so we can get really busy sometimes. Not too bad at night though. We close at 8, 7 during the winter. We're not allowed to mop, sweep, or hoover while we have customers in. However, after 6 p.m., we usually only have 5 members of staff in, 2 in the kitchen, 1 in the shop, and 2 in the restaurant, including the bar. So basically, as soon as the bosses leave, we do everything we can get away with. Sometimes sweeping and mopping if there's only 1 or 2 tables in, as we do have sectioned off areas and we'll keep the main walkway clear for customers to leave. This woman came into our shop at about 7:50 p.m. on a Wednesday night. When she entered our shop, the person told her we will be closing in 10 minutes.
"I won't be long,"
was all she said. At this point, me and my coworker had no one in, and we're doing our best to sweep and mop and finish the bar before 8. Can't do the till until after 8. I had the hoover out ready to go. Our shopkeeper then started rushing her to either buy something or leave, to which she announced she was planning on eating here, knowing we're not allowed to send people away before the door is locked. This woman saw us both counting money and hoovering with half the chairs in the room on the tables and still comes in telling us she's in a caravan outside and has been waiting for our place to quiet down. We'd been quiet all night. She meant she wanted the place and us to herself. When she finally ordered scampi, after complaining our specials weren't available anymore, she took 40 minutes to eat the thing, and then even wanted tea afterwards, which took her a further half an hour to finish. All this time we couldn't do anything. Couldn't finish cleaning, couldn't do the till. We helped the kitchen finish as we all have to leave together, but the shopkeeper could leave. Finally at 9:10 she's done and ready to pay before telling us she's going to go look around the shop some more. I'm afraid not. The shop and restaurant both closed at 8 and we'll have to ask you to leave via the fire escape.
"But I want to look around the shop."
Well, I'm afraid it's shut. It's open from 8 tomorrow morning. Didn't you say you were staying in a caravan outside?
"But I don't want to shop with other people."
After paying, this woman continued to try getting through the barriers into our shop, and we had to walk her outside into her caravan just so she would leave. Fortunately, between the 4 of us, we were out by 9:30, but this woman caused 4 members of our staff to stay an hour and a half and keeping the building open and lights and electricity on for $13.95, no tip. Yet, my boss still won't let us have last orders. Am I the jerk for not letting my in-laws move in with me? I, 24 female, met my husband, who's 23, when we were 15 and 16 in high school. We found out I was pregnant shortly after we started dating, and I gave birth to our son at 17. Since then, our relationship was on a fast track, and we got married at 21 after finishing school. We bought a house last year, and my in-laws have not been super supportive of our decisions. They made constant jokes about selling their house to move in with us, and bringing my husband's 2 siblings, both adults, with them since they live with them full-time. But it all changed when they tried to push us to buy a bigger and more expensive house than we wanted so that we had a room for when the family wanted to come visit and stay. My mother-in-law kept showing husband houses she liked, and when he told her we were looking for something different, she told him we had to compromise for the family. They finally lost it on us when we told them we put in an offer on a house more than 7 hours away, which was in an area we planned to move to all along. We just never told them, and they didn't handle that well, telling me I'm taking their son and grandchild away from them. The offer went through and we moved in as soon as possible, but had to deal with in-laws constantly coming to visit uninvited. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were showing up every weekend for months without calling in advance. Husband and I both tried to explain that we are constantly having to cancel weekend plans for their visits and canceling other friends and family visits because of them, but they don't care. Making my home their second home, not listening to our rules, and constantly undermining me in my own home. Finally, we told them if they didn't call and ask in advance, they would be turned away at the door, and they stopped showing up. 2 weeks ago, husband got a call from father-in-law saying that his job had laid him off and he would be short on expenses this month. That's when mother-in-law took the phone and suggested this be the perfect time for them to come move closer to us. They were already looking to sell their home, and they could all come stay with us until father-in-law found a new job. We told them our home couldn't accommodate 4 more people, nor could we financially support them. Father-in-law insisted it wouldn't be for long, but he is very frugal and does not like to spend money unnecessarily, and I feel like this is just an excuse to cut back on living expenses for them. I also want my son to have room to grow and have room for a second kid someday in the next year or so. My husband is in the middle and understands why I don't want them moving in, but at the same time, he thinks we shouldn't turn our backs on his family. I'm torn because I think I have a solid argument for as why they shouldn't, but it is my husband's house too, and I don't want to upset him. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If you let them move in, they will never leave, and they will mooch off you and your husband and probably ruin your marriage. Your home can't accommodate yourselves and your kid, 2 more adults, 2 more kids with all of their belongings. Your husband needs to tell his parents that he's sorry they're facing difficulties, but that dad needs to apply for new jobs, and both mom and dad need to work. He needs to tell them that they won't be able to move into your house for any length of time. If they want to live in your area, they should start applying for jobs and looking for rentals. He further needs to tell them that he would be happy to look over their finances to see if there's room for improvement, but the 2 of you can't afford to financially support them. He needs to be kind but firm. There's a good chance that mother-in-law and father-in-law plan to move in with you and your husband and retire, expecting you to pay their living expenses for the remainder of their lives. Given their insistence, allowing them to move in when they are relatively young and healthy would be a big mistake.
Bought my Karen girlfriend a new iPhone. Sadly, it was the wrong color. It was my girlfriend's 23 birthday, and I, 25 male, got her an iPhone 12 Pro, as she's been wanting one for a while, so I saved up and it was very expensive. When I surprised her with it, I was expecting her to be excited, but instead, she told me that she wanted a black one, not a white one. The thing is, she never told me she wanted black. She just always said she wanted the phone itself. When I told her I didn't know, she told me that I ruined her birthday and just left. I was honestly in shock and disbelief that she was so upset about a phone color. I didn't know what to do with the phone and planned on taking it back. But then I remembered that my sister, who's 19, just had a baby and unfortunately had to drop out of college to find a job. I decided that I was going to give the phone to her since the phone she had was not working well anymore. I told her that I would give the phone to her, but I still had to check if my girlfriend changed her mind. So I texted her saying, "This is your last chance to change your mind about the phone because I plan on giving it to my sister." And she just texted me back, "I don't care." I asked her one last time, and again she said, "I told you I don't care." So that was that. A few hours later, I was in bed when my girlfriend came in and asked me where was her phone, and I told her, "I thought you didn't want it. I'm sorry, but it's too late now. I already gave it to my sister." She got angry and started shouting at me, saying that she thought I was joking and that it was her phone, so I had no right to give it away, and started stomping her feet, saying she wanted her phone back right now. I lost my cool and told her, "You are an adult behaving like a kid who didn't get their way. I asked you twice if you wanted the phone and you said no. Now, please leave me alone and stop behaving like a toddler." She stomped her way out of the room and texted me saying that I was a jerk, and now all of her friends are ganging up on me. So now I'm wondering, am I the jerk? Karen stops me mid-workout and demands to use the squat rack. This is becoming more and more common at the surrounding gyms, which is really annoying and a reason I've changed gyms more than once this year alone. Working out is a pillar of my everyday life, and it has been for the past 10 years, and I'm at the gym every day of the week. Now, I don't go to the gym to talk to people, make friends, or make funny videos. I go to train and go home. However, now with the new video trends, many folks want to record their exercises to post on social media. This is their business and not mine. They can do whatever they want, but I also don't think I need to stop doing my own workout to accommodate them. Last night I was doing squats on the Smith machine. I work out with headphones and I didn't notice that someone was trying to get my attention. I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder mid-squat, and only then I noticed a woman with a very annoyed expression. She barely allowed me to finish the movement to start talking, which was muffled due to headphones. Long story short, she was annoyed because I was training on the Smith machine and she wanted to record herself doing regular squats. However, she said the best spot was in front of that Smith machine. There's more than one, and she didn't want me on the frame. So she wanted me to stop my series for her to record. Now, usually if someone comes to me with a good attitude and asks if it's okay for me to stop for a series or two for them to record or even move machines, I would absolutely not mind and comply. This lady did nothing of the sort, being extremely arrogant and honestly extremely annoying. So I was petty and I told her to record once I was done, and I proceeded to do every single exercise I could on the same Smith machine. Squats, Smith. Hip thrust, Smith. It was petty, and I know I shouldn't have done it, but I felt very vindicated seeing her annoying expression.
That being said, a few people said I was a jerk for doing that, as there were other machines I could have used. Honestly, they might be right, but hey, I thought I'd ask the internet. Was I too much of a jerk here? Not the jerk. First off, who interrupts someone mid-squat? A lot of gyms have a no recording policy where I live. In my last gym, these people just got reported to the fitness manager. Not the jerk. For all those people trying to film themselves in a public place, get over yourselves. We don't care about your 1,327 followers seeing your gains. Stop disrupting public space with your ego. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have gone ahead and moved for her or not? Please let us know. I would have started coughing all over her. It's one of the quickest ways to get people to stop messing with you, especially these days. Boss did me wrong, so I put him out of business. This happened 12 years ago, and I'm still reaping my rewards. I worked for the company. They did 3-phase photography of families and their kids. No wedding events or anything like that. Straight studio work that was in a portable setting. Sittings booked for 10 minutes, and we were supposed to shoot 30 to 50 a day. Yes, it is as wretched of a job as it sounds. It was fast, high energy, and at times simply brutal. 1. Pre-seller. They come in 2 to 3 weeks in advance and sell a special 10 by 13 portrait and book the appointment. 2. The photographer. That's me in this instance. Comes in for about a week and takes the pictures. 3. The salesperson returns 2 weeks later with the special along with the other 6 poses I took and tries to sell you $400 worth of pictures. I was very good at what I did. The company sales average was $100 per customer per 50 customers. The more you shoot, the lower your quality because you spend less time taking care of details, and details sell pictures. My average was 175-ish per 150 to 200 customers. I was making this company a lot of money, and they consistently treated me like crap. Oh, the stories. Their business model was shoot as many sittings as you can, as fast as you can. To them, shooting 50 with a $100 average was better than shooting 35 with a $150 average, even though the profit margin was exactly the same. I never agreed with that, and boss and I went around and around about it every week. They withheld raises because I didn't have enough sittings and took my bonuses because I wasn't meeting their quotas. So I figured out how to be fast, efficient, and darn good. That's another post. So that's the background. Now the good stuff. Enter the jerk. The jerk is a pre-seller who lied to the customers, lied to the store, and would book appointments from 9 a.m. to 8:30 p.m. even though the studio hours were 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. He told every lie in the book, and I think he even added a few of his own. Want to bring your dog? Family of 15? Sure. Bring 5 change of clothes and we'll even have her do your makeup. I don't even do my own makeup. Come and get your picture taken and we will throw in a free toaster. And just to make it interesting, he would triple and quadruple book appointments, and when he ran out of those, he would sell open appointments and tell people to just come in anytime and my photographer will work with you. Ugh, just writing that makes me mad even after all these years. The biggest problem is he would waive the sitting fee or just not tell them. I was obligated to collect that $8. Every time I didn't, it came out of my check. It was a nightmare. I refused to work behind the jerk for these and 1,000 other reasons. I told boss that if they ever put me behind the jerk again, I would quit, which is exactly what happened. They knew he had been working at the store I was assigned, and they lied about it. I immediately called boss and told him this was my last week and that he needed to make arrangements to get the photography equipment at the end of the shoot. I should have walked out, but I was young and dumb. It was a 3-day shoot, and I did 316 customers by myself. That is an insane amount of sittings, and nobody was happy. Every night, the store manager had to tell my customers to leave because the store was closed. People were lined up at 9 a.m. waiting for me. I took so much mistreatment that week. After a customer threw a shoe at me and another spit on my pizza, the store security guard brought a chair over and stayed with me almost the entire time I was there. I honestly cannot remember how many people were escorted out of the store because they acted a fool in my studio. It's been over a decade, and I still have nightmares about that week. But nobody came to get the equipment, so I start making phone calls and plotting. Me. Hey, what do you want me to do with your equipment? Boss. You're going to need it next week in Florida. Me. No, because I quit. Boss. You didn't give me any notice, so I'm not accepting your resignation. I'm sending you to Florida next week. Me. I'm an independent contractor, remember? You can't make me go to Florida. This is not complicated. I quit. Boss, just go to Florida. I don't have time for this now. You can quit in 3 weeks if you can hire a replacement. And he hangs up. Nope, not going to Florida. I packed the equipment and took it home with me. The camera was a brand new Canon T2i 550D, and those were pricey back in 2010. I really didn't want to give it back, but it wasn't mine to keep. I had an idea. Boss was an absolute train wreck of a human. If he didn't want to do something, he wouldn't. If he could find someone else to do it, he would. I decided to use his own worst traits against him: avoidance and procrastination. The next thing I did was take the company credit card and go to the nearest storage unit with climate control. I rented a unit and paid for the first month, but just one. I unloaded it all, down to the last halogen light bulb. I took detailed pictures of everything and an inventory. I locked the door and walked away. At this point, there was nothing I could do but wait and hope Boss would continue to be the worthless wreck I knew him to be. Next, I called and reported the card stolen. Why? Because I knew if I didn't, that card would remain active and rent would be paid every month on time, and that just wasn't going to work for me. I cut it in half and sent it and the combination to the storage locker to Boss via FedEx, along with a hand-painted sign that said, "I quit." I also sent an email to HR telling them that I was terminating my contract and that Boss had the information and the equipment. This is probably the only sketchy thing I did. The person I emailed was out on medical leave, and I knew it. I could have sent that email to a dozen other people who worked there, but they might have paid attention to it. By the time she got back to the office, she had so many emails, she couldn't even begin to tackle them all. A month goes by and the police knock on my door. Okay, so I wasn't expecting that. The company has reported the equipment stolen and the police are there to investigate. I really thought I was going to jail. The cop that knocked on the door was fully expecting to take me away in handcuffs until I explained what was going on. I ended up taking copies of the emails to the police department as well as my copy of the contract with the storage unit. I also had a copy of the shipping label. Both my name and the company were listed on the contract. I had to make an official statement and jump through some hoops. The company had placed a monetary value of $12,000 on the studio rig, so potentially I was in a lot of trouble. Except I covered myself. The police told me I was in the clear because the storage unit had their name on the contract, their credit card was used to pay for it, and I had sent the combination and all the pertinent information to the company. I am very good at cover yourself with paper. At this point, I figure the gig is up because surely they're going to come to get this rig or send someone or something. Nope, Boss is still worthless. 2 more months go by. I get a call from the storage facility. They're about to cut the lock and auction the contents. I was so excited. I called Boss again. He dodged my calls and ignored my emails to please call me immediately. I never specifically stated what I wanted to talk to him about, and just like I was hoping he would, he ignored me. Okie dokie, I have done all that I can. And that's when it all started to come together. And then I hit a pretty good snag, but it actually worked out better in the end. In this state, if a storage unit goes up for sale, the owner cannot purchase it at auction. I didn't know that. But where there is a will, there is a way. They sent letters and called 3 more times, and then the date was set. The unit went up for auction on my birthday. My neighbor went to the sale. He bought the unit for $125. I couldn't believe it. And of course, we were in cahoots on this, but we had to make it look like we weren't. The grip on the camera mounts cost more than that, not to mention the lighting, props, and costumes, and of course, the camera. My neighbor then put an ad in the local newspaper for photography stuff, $1,000 firm, but didn't list anything specific, and oops, put the wrong number in the ad. A week later, he wanted it out of his garage, so he sold it to me for $126. He has a bill of sale from the auction. I have a bill of sale from him. It's now mine, and there's nothing the company can do about it. But they tried. I now have a fully functional photography studio, all the contacts I need to start my own business, and the skills to do it. I started calling all the stores I had worked for the last 8 years and offered them a much better deal than what the company was giving them. I did my own pre-selling, my own photography, and my own sales, except I took it a step farther. I bought a monitor and computer and let people preview their pictures and order the day of the shoot. They paid in full and I mailed the pictures directly to them. People loved it. No high-pressure sales, no tricks. My customers were happy and so were my stores. About 6 months after my first independent shoot, I hear from the company. I got several nasty letters from them, which I ignored. Word had gotten back to them that I was using their equipment and that I was working for someone else. I just laughed at them. They thought so little of me that it never occurred to them that it was my business. Then I got a nasty legal letter from a lawyer. It started with cease and desist, rolled into me violating the non-competitors agreement, and ended with the return of their stolen property. They had apparently not told him all of the facts. I sent him copies of everything. I waited a few weeks for a response from him and heard nothing. I finally called to find out what was going on, but no one was available to take my call. How convenient. A few days later, I got a certified letter in the mail saying, "No other legal action will be forthcoming from this office." I would have been content to just let it slide, but this whole thing ticked me off, and now I wanted revenge. I made a real effort to really get them. Little by little, I built my business and my reputation. I didn't have to do any of the nasty tricks that the jerk did. Within a year, I had stores and schools calling me. I had more work than I could handle on my own, so I took on a second photographer and a third. I actually hired 4 people out from under their noses. At the height of my business, I had 8 additional photographers and a full-time office assistant. I could have grown much larger, and in hindsight, I'm so glad I didn't. Digital photography was a huge boom to the industry, and then it backfired. I found my niche in the market just as it exploded. I ran the company completely out of 3 states. They lost all of their chain contracts to me, including the store where it all started. The jerk lost all of his stores and ended up working at a gas station. The boss ended up demoted because his district was dissolved when I sniped the contracts. The jerk actually tried to convince one of my photographers to hire him to do the pre-selling for her. By now, my name and my business name had a really good reputation. Boss left the company for good and used me as a personal reference. He was a good photographer, just a rotten manager. And I took great joy in telling the people who called me that I was legally not allowed to tell them what I thought of the man. The age of the cell phone camera pretty much destroyed traditional photography, and I closed my doors as a business in late 2017. The company closed for good in 2016, and I would like to think I had a hand in that. I'm still standing, and they are nothing but an empty building. I still have the original rig, but the camera has been replaced several times. I do senior pictures and the occasional venue shoot. Most of my photography is for restaurant menus now. People ask me if that's boring. I've never had a meatball scream, cry, or kick me, which is pretty much a daily occurrence when you work with kids. This may not be as epic as some on here, but I beat them at their own game, and that still feels pretty darn good. My roommate fails at adulthood. Her parents expect me to take care of her. I'm 23, female. My roommate is 22, but failed at basic adulting because her parents failed their job. She presents herself as the cute, kind, understanding, and innocent girl when she's with people. I was fooled by this too. It's why I agreed to be her roommate, because I thought she was a nice person. But she's a failure at basic adulthood. We became roommates a few months ago, and I can't wait to move out next month. At first, everything was normal, then it got bad. She fails at basic cleaning. She let her pet starve and live in its own filth. I think she should be reported because the animal would have starved if I hadn't been feeding it. She made the house dirty, hair everywhere, mess in the kitchen, the weird smell from her room, and I've been doing all of the cleaning. She only cleans when I get really upset and tell her to clean up. And I really hate how she always pulls the innocent thing whenever I tell her your bad hygiene has damaged our living conditions. A few days ago, she caused a little drama in our school because she disappeared for 2 days straight. She didn't respond to anyone's calls or texts. People thought that she had went missing. I panicked too because the area we live in isn't very safe. I really don't like her, but still, I don't want anything bad to happen to her. Eventually, yesterday, she returned home looking normal and said she went over to a friend's place. Her parents panicked and somehow got my number. I told them she has returned home safely. They told me they believe their daughter is now depressed or something. There's no diagnosis though. She has stopped going to school all of a sudden, refuses to talk to them, they couldn't hear from her for days, etc. I was weirded out because I didn't notice she actually had dropped out. I told them she had returned home safely, but they wouldn't calm down. Now the annoying part begins. We are in another country for college, so we are both very far from home. I understand that they worry about their kids' safety. My parents worry about me too. Therefore, I always text them to let them know what I'm doing and that I'm safe. But my roommate's parents? I can see why she became distant from them. Ever since her mom got my number, she constantly rants about how they think their daughter is depressed and requires help. Her daughter wouldn't talk to her. She's heartbroken and desperately wants to know how her daughter is doing. She talked about how they were very protective and strict about parenting when she grew up. No wonder she fails at basic adulthood. They didn't teach her anything. Because her daughter once left the house for 2 days and didn't contact anyone, she now believes that her daughter is never home. Ever since she got home, her mom has texted me 4 times from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. asking me if her kid is at home, and I say yes she is, but she wouldn't believe me and just kept talking. She even asks me if my roommate would pretend to be home but is actually out. I told her that's impossible because our bedrooms are connected and I can hear if she's home or not. She just kept talking about how her daughter is so weak and helpless and she needs help. I can tell they definitely spoiled her. She asked me how far is our apartment from our campus. I said it's 20-minute walk and 10-minute bus ride. She thinks this is too far away from the school. She thinks a 10-minute bus ride or a 20-minute walk is too much work for her kid. I've stopped responding to her texts because it's annoying. They even tried to pay me $100 to take care of her, like take her out to dinner or something like that, but I politely refused. Because why the heck should I do that? Why is your daughter's messy life my responsibility? After I politely said no, the mother said she needs our address because she's going to come to the country and move in with her daughter. Then she's going to take her daughter home. Oh my goodness, lady, you really need to calm down. Of course, I said no to her. She said she wished I could sympathize with a heartbroken, lonely mother. For goodness sake, I have my own life, lady. I understand your situation, but really, I'm not your daughter's babysitter. After her parents realized I don't give a hoot, they tried to get our address from my other friends. Some of the parents in our school, those parents whose kids are all from our country, have this group chat and a chatting app so they can know about how their kids are doing at school. I honestly think this is so unnecessary because most of us are at least 19. How come a 19-year-old needs your daily checkups? But after witnessing my 22-year-old roommate fail at basic adulthood, I started to understand why these parents have such a group chat. Her parents found the number of a friend of mine from this group chat and started texting her. They asked her, "Where do I live?" Thank goodness my friend didn't tell them. She let me know about their actions instead. She was asking what was going on with all of this. Here's what happened after they couldn't get my information from my friend. My friend politely told them she can't help them, and I ignored their text for a day. Then I told them politely to stop contacting me and that I'm not going to let them live with me. Her mom replied, saying they had finally convinced their daughter to come home, so they're not going to bother me again. Thank goodness. I'm completely fine with it if her parents just want to quickly stop by our place and take her home, but when they first mentioned this, they meant to live with us, not quickly stop by and take her home. They know their daughter isn't willing to come home, so her mother thought it would be a good idea for her to come live with us. I absolutely do not want to be forced to live with some random old lady who I know nothing of, who has a completely different lifestyle and schedule. I don't think I'm being cold or selfish by doing this. After all, I am paying half of everything for the apartment, and it says in the lease, you can't just bring someone else to live in the house without an agreement. Am I the jerk for telling my dad cheating is what got us here, not my mom? My parents divorced when I was 7 after my mom found out dad had been cheating on her for 5 years with someone she considered to be her friend. The reveal of the affair came during my birthday party, which we celebrated late because dad made up some story about an old friend passing and had to go to the funeral when he was actually with her for an ultrasound after learning that she was pregnant. My mom never got over what he did to her. I think what made it worse is 2 people betrayed her instead of 1, because if our friends are willing to hurt us like this, then we're done for. My dad married his affair partner. They have 6 kids together now. My mom has stayed away from them as much as humanly possible. She told me a long time ago that she loved me, wanted me to be happy and loved, and not to be distant from them for her, but that she would never be able to play happy families with my dad and his wife and their kids because some hurts are too deep and painful to move on from. When stay in place was ordered, things between my mom and dad deteriorated after my dad asked if my mom would take his other 6 kids into her home so the siblings could see each other, since both he and his wife were frontline workers and had planned to send them somewhere to limit their exposure. Mom said no way. She was upset at dad for even asking, while Dad was upset with her that she didn't force me to go to his in-laws to spend time with my siblings while we weren't legally allowed to meet up with others. Things are the same now, only my mom suffered less financially through the lockdown. After a while, my dad and his wife left their jobs when it got too much, and their financial stability took a huge hit. My dad can't afford to throw a graduation party for me, which is fine, but he and his family are not welcome to the one my mom is hosting. He was complaining about them missing out on celebrating with me because of my mom. I told him it was because of his affair and not my mom, that he was the one who betrayed her over and over again, disrespected her, and then expected her to act like none of that happened so he could act like the good guy. He told me it had been a decade and my mom and I should be over it. I should not have taken sides. I told him he should have kept the affair from me then instead of letting it come out for me to hear. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Your dad has some audacity. Oh, I cheated on you with your friend. Now take in my 6 kids with you. Why do you even still speak to this guy? OP. Mostly because my mom has encouraged it up until now. But since turning 18, I have considered dropping the rope and having nothing to do with them. I can't say I enjoy having them in my life. It was just one of those things you do because it's expected. For the most part, I am over that. Fire my boss? Hide millions from your client? I don't think so. This happened a while ago, but it's still so fresh in my mind. I left college with a business degree in one hand and no job in the other. And like so many colleges, the promises of alumni willing to give jobs to graduates could not have been further from the truth. So I had to seek out my start from the bottom. I found a good job in operations at a company. I can't say who without giving it away. Had a great boss who taught me pretty much everything I needed to know. Work was great and the money was good. I need to explain how the business worked so you can understand how the plan worked. The corporate office was in California and we were not. There are a lot of things that went on at this company, and I can't get into all of them because it would just take away from the story. But let's just say they had a very Stratton Oakman vibe when it came to sales. I started out working in operations with some of the smaller clients, but with some help from my boss, was able to climb the ladder rather quickly to the point of being over all the operations and order processing for the firm. We had a very large client, 90% of the company's business. The way it worked was, we had 2 sets of sales reps, TSRs and CSRs. TSRs were the heavy hitters who reached out to the other big businesses and tech firms to extend their warranties on a product. They made real good money. The CSRs were more of the mom and pop crowd and the inbound sales calls for those that wanted to extend their warranties. The reps were all given codes that associates their clients' files with theirs, so if someone did a renewal automatically, they would get paid as it was their client. Pretty sweet gig. The client hired the firm to be the middleman for their B2B as they handled all of their everyday clients. For every $100 that came into our firm, 18%, or $18, would be for the company and the rest would be sent to the clients with the warranties activated. Most of the clients paid by credit card or PO with a wire transfer, but there would also be a good amount of checks each week and would need to be processed. A little while after I started, the client check portion was now going to be overseen by one of the sales managers. Didn't really faze me because I was working on the smaller accounts. Since we were a publicly traded company, all the sales reps' orders had to go to operations to be fulfilled. They weren't allowed to process them on their own. This is when things started going downhill. My boss at the time was given temporary access to the financials as they were hiring a new CFO and he had a background with it. We went to lunch like we had done plenty of times before, but he seemed different. When I asked him if something was wrong, he told me that something looked off with our biggest client for one of the accounts. He wanted to make sure before he said anything to the higher-ups. While this was going on, I had been offered the chance to be our new compliance officer, which means I would need to make sure everything was on the up and up. Soon after, I come in to find out that my boss was just terminated for a multitude of reasons, all of which had to be untrue, because he was a pretty well-liked guy with not just the company, but with our clients as well. As I log into my terminal, I see that before he left, he had given me admin access to his files. Here's where things started to pop off. Remember those checks that clients were sending in to renew their warranties? Well, we were cashing them all right. Apparently, we just weren't adding those renewals to their products in the system. That would have triggered a payout to our client,
who, as you remember, would be getting 82% of that money. Instead, they were cashing the checks, keeping the money, and using the interest in the accounts. Yes, in the mid-2000s, banks actually paid interest to cover losses in their collections department. It was wild to see that this was happening and something had to be done. So I hatched a plan. First things first, secure a new job, because it won't be a fun place to work after this. Done. My previous boss knew of other companies that would scoop me up. Put in my notice and stated in my exit interview that I just couldn't be a part of what was happening, even though HR was in on this. I wanted it on the record. Next, get approval for overtime for all operations crew to come in on a Saturday and double pay them. They arrive early Saturday, obviously not too thrilled as to why they are there. But then I explain that if they complete the task, not only do they get their overtime, but they get nice bonuses. They were much happier. They spent the entire day applying all of those checks dated back years to the client accounts. We're talking millions of dollars. When all of the sales reps arrived Monday, they were shocked as heck. Not only did they meet their weekly goals before picking up the phones, they made their monthly and quarterly goals too. 2 weeks into the new quarter. Cheers, partying, yelling, screaming, celebrating, except sales management. They went from being really excited to skeptical to confused to, oh no, in about 2 hours. They realized where it must have came from. Because not only did the company hit all of these sales, since it had been over a day, the client came into work Monday to see a very nice payday in their system as well. And like anyone, would have questions and says they're coming out to congratulate the team on such great numbers. So management starts scrambling because they can't figure out how this happened, and all under my boss's old login. On my last day, I arrive and in the lobby. I've got my box ready for the last of my things. Guy walks up as we're waiting for the elevator and he strikes up a conversation with me. He notices my box and jokes about getting fired, and I just tell him I had a great opportunity come up, so I decided to leave before crap hits the fan. We laughed. Really nice down-to-earth guy. He realizes we're getting off on the same floor. He asks if I work for X. I say yes. He asks where. I tell him operations, and he reveals that he is the CEO of our client. We go our separate ways. Client shows up, and there's a big party. Afterwards, the client says that they would love to get a breakdown of where most of the sales came from, so they can allocate more money to that department. Management says sure, but it made up a lie about how they can't share client payment info due to regulations, blah blah blah. Cue my exit from the company. 2 weeks go by and I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize, so I let it go to voicemail. When I get off work, I checked it to find out it was the CEO of the client where I used to work. He has had something come up and would like to talk to me. Of course, I'm nervous as heck, but I call him back and he picks up on the first ring and we get to chatting for a bit, and he finally just asks me, "Why did you leave?" I tell him I had a great opportunity come up. He doesn't buy it and says that apparently my comment about crap hitting the fan really stuck with him and he thinks something more is going on. So after a little more prodding from him, I tell him, "Just look at collections," and that's all I can say. He thanks me and I hang up. 2 days later, he pulled the plug on the account. Apparently, my old company tried to threaten him with a lawsuit for pulling the account 3 years early. He replied with, "That's fine, because when I show the courts that I have the evidence that you committed fraud," corporate came in and cleaned house. All of the management was fired within the day. 1 month later, my friend and I had a very memorable trip to Vegas, all courtesy of our old client. Epilogue. Best part. I guess this should have been part of the story. My old boss was an adopted kid, treated his adopted parents great, while their real kids didn't, and when they passed, they left him all of their money. All of it. This was about 2008. He was in a weird place because he loved his parents and was really close to them. He went to his church to pray for his parents and for what to do with his new landfall of money. He loved working but didn't need to anymore. He left the church and went to a bar because, I mean, who doesn't? He sits next to a guy who, and this is almost out of a movie, is a developer and has run out of money to finish his development because it's 2008 and no one is loaning money. They get to talking and he thinks maybe this is a sign. I'll speed this up because I've got to run to work, but he invests in the guy's development by buying all of the houses, dirt cheap at the time, and now lives off the residual income from all of them being rentals.
Life sucks because so many people do crappy things and get away with it, and it's great when good things happen to good people. My ex pranked me by telling everyone I got her pregnant. My girlfriend believed her and ended up moving out. Over a year ago, my relationship got put in a bad place because my ex, who I broke up with 2 years prior, sent me a DM that I'm her baby daddy. Her daughter was under a year old, by the way, so I already knew it was BS, and I told her don't contact me again. She found my girlfriend, who's 27, on Instagram, and then started sending her messages too that this is my daughter. She's sorry for being involved with me, knowing I was in a relationship with my girlfriend, but since I'm refusing to take responsibility, she didn't know who else to reach out to, trying to make herself seem all genuine. My girlfriend was sent fake screenshots that were supposedly from me, then also the one I actually sent her about leaving me alone because that's not my baby. Around this time, my girlfriend was 6 months pregnant, so the stress and hormones of that, plus the info she gave her, the times we supposedly met up after telling my girlfriend I'm working late matches up because those were actually nights I had to work late. All of that freaked her out, and she really did start having doubts. It got to the point where my girlfriend was really scared and confused, and then she went to stay with her parents for a few days. I was so scared I was gonna lose my family. Then, my ex apologized when she heard my girlfriend wasn't staying at our apartment. She just wanted to mess with us a little because she was still bitter I dumped her, but she didn't mean for it to go that far. My girlfriend came back. It took some time to come back from that, but we have our son now who's 7 months old, and we've been happier than ever. My sister, 25, female, told me about this last weekend when we were at our parents'. She got a little tipsy, and when we were joking about all of our old embarrassing stories, she just blurted it out that she thought it was okay to talk about it now since me and my girlfriend are fine. I kept asking her why the heck would she do something like that, straight up arguing right there in front of my family. She says she was just being stupid and bored since she wasn't working, and like my ex, didn't realize it would get that bad, which is why they stopped it. But obviously, my ex didn't rat on my sister. I called my sister a jerk for almost wrecking my relationship, and what that put my girlfriend through. My sister started crying, and this is why she didn't say anything, because it might get this reaction. She only said something now because she was embarrassed, and now we're in a good place, so she doesn't know why I'm so mad about it. It was a whole thing. My sister cried in the bathroom and wouldn't come out. I went home early to be with my girlfriend and son. They're all saying that I behaved like a jerk when my sister decided to come clean, and that I owe her an apology for my overreaction, just like she owed me one. Was my reaction warranted though, or was it actually an overreaction? I'm still mad about it. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. That's not a prank. That's an attempt to completely ruin your life and current relationship. How can your sister justify causing that much distress to your pregnant girlfriend? Because she was bored? What on earth? Not the jerk. And if I were you, she'd no longer be my sister. That's not a prank or a joke. It's malicious and cruel. Would you forgive your sister if she pulled a prank like this on you or not? Please let us know. A real sister would never pull a prank like that. I'd definitely cut her out of my life. Landscaping owner rips off my friend for $400, so my friend makes him incur $15,000 in expenses. A while back, my friend was selling some stuff online, and among the items was a water heater. You know, the ones you see in every community hall and church kitchen? It was in working condition. He threw it up online for $150 and got an email from a person who runs a landscaping business saying he'll give him $100 cash today. Done. 2 weeks later, he got an email saying that it's not working. Weird. So my friend offered to give a full refund or cover repair cost if it's under $100. The guy instead sent an invoice for $400 saying the repairs had been done, and if my friend doesn't pay it in 48 hours, he'll send a debt collector after him. He paid it, out of fear, and emailed him the confirmation. The landscaping owner then emailed back saying, "This is the price you sometimes have to pay when selling secondhand electronics," followed by a, "Have a great day, don't let this hold you back," with a smiley at the end of the email. A month later, my friend was in a bar and overhears a girl talking about how her boss, who runs a landscaping firm, did over some guy selling a water heater. My friend said, "Oh no, I gotta hear this. Do you mind if I join your table?" And the girl said sure and told the story. Her boss had brought a busted water heater from a secondhand store for $25 and a working one for $100 and billed the seller for the repair for the busted one before he sold it for $300 to some community group. My friend asked, "Who did this so I don't hire that guy to fix up my yard?" She says the company name, and lo and behold, it's on the email of the guy my friend sold the water heater to. He was the jerk in this story. He told me he was pretty angry about it, but lockdown then hit, so he had other stuff to worry about. 18 months later, he was browsing the website he originally sold the water heater on, and he saw a bunch of landscaping materials: shovels, gardening stuff, wheelbarrows, lights for working at night, drills, nail guns, some construction materials, and a generator. Now, in my friend's location, apparently, if you're selling a generator, then you need to have a warrant of fitness for it, proving that it works, it's safe, no flayed wires, etc. Most people ignore it, and he saw that this generator is being sold by the landscaping firm. This generator, he said, just by looking at it, there was no way it would have a warrant of fitness. Word of note: failure for a business to provide the warrant upon request for a generator after 2 weeks, when reported to the official departments and enforced by the court, the punishment is a hefty fine, and the courts often force the seller to refund the affected party and pay any costs that they incurred. evilplottingmusic.mp3. He talked to his flatmate, who agreed that they would go 50-50 on the generator, but he would transfer the money. Now, my friend had never met the landscaping firm owner face-to-face when selling the water heater. He left it outside, and pickup was confirmed via his security camera. And when he gets there, it was clear that the owner, this old grumpy-looking man who enjoyed yelling at his employees, had emptied out his storage unit. The owner was very much, "As it is, no refund," and the flatmate showed him the transfer confirmation, and they take the generator for $800. No warrant of fitness provided. They then took it to a friend of theirs who's an electrician, and he agreed to check it out and give an invoice for repairs, and to quote the friend, "It would be cheaper to buy a new generator, and to be honest, this generator shouldn't have been sold, it should have been scrapped." They also found that the main identifier number had been scratched off, but not the second number that's often recorded on the warrant for tracking purposes. So they got in contact with the seller, telling him the cost for repair, around $5,000. He promptly tells them that he's not paying, "as it is, no refund," to which they then asked, "Have you got the warrant of fitness for this generator?" Silence for 2 days. They followed up with another email asking for it. No response. They then ask again and get an email from him saying that he'll take it back for $800. They said, "No, we want the warrant," and they get no response. They emailed him every day for 2 weeks, nothing. So they printed out the original item listing that had been screenshotted and had been archived on the website and reported him to the website and then to the government. 4 months later, my friend is in court and the guy went up to him. He tells him that he will take back the generator for $800 and that my friend and his flatmate will be going in to tell the judge that the seller has refunded them and that they want it all dropped, and that's what's happening here. Full stop, end of story. They're doing what they are told to do. My friend said no. So they went into the courtroom and it's over very quickly. The inspector the government sent out to inspect the generator stated that it was in poor condition, shouldn't have been sold, was highly unsafe, and that the seller had tried to get the generator a warrant in early 2021, but instead had been told that it was to be repaired or scrapped and that it was not to be sold. They identified it by a second number on the generator that they took down in the original attempt to get it a warrant, which had not been scratched off like the first. The judge ordered the landscaping firm owner to refund the flatmate the $800, pay the $5,000 for repairs to the generator, and was ordered to pay a $10,000 fine, which would be given directly to my friend's flatmate as the affected party. When they left the courtroom, the owner was furious and told them that under no uncertain terms was he paying them a penny more and that he couldn't understand what he had done to deserve such treatment. To which my friend said, "Remember the water heater?" He gave him a very confused look. "Remember the water heater you bought for $100? Well, I do, because I sold it to you. And I know that you had a different one repaired and invoiced me for it." His jaw was on the floor, and to hit it home, he said, "It sucks, doesn't it, when what goes around comes around, especially when it accumulated interest. You have 48 hours to pay or a debt collector will be contacted. Remember, this is the price you sometimes have to pay when selling secondhand electronics. Have a great day. Don't let this hold you back." And they left. He paid the $15,000 2 days later. My friend and the flatmate split the $10,000 50-50 as they agreed, combination of rent payments and study stuff. The generator they got repaired, and then they got a warrant for it before selling it for $1,000 with a newly replaced identifier number. They then went out for a wonderful dinner and night out in town. Am I the jerk for telling my dad the real reason why I don't want to go on vacation with him and his family? I'm a 17-year-old male. When I was around 9, my dad, 39 male, started seeing a friend of my mom's, cheated on my mom. They married and now they have 3 kids together. My dad asked for custody and he was granted to have me on weekends. He seemed happy to have me and always tried to include me in everything, but it was kind of weird and frustrating. He even tried to make me call his wife Mom and went for full custody several times, since being with his wife and making me accept his new family was more important than spending actual time with me. I stopped going to his house when I was 14. He tried to fight for full custody after my mom started dating my stepdad, a nice guy, but I told him to stop. The other reason why I stopped going, I never told my dad this one, is because his wife was so hostile towards me. My dad used to pay attention to me when I was there, so I think she didn't like it that way, and one day told me behind my dad's back that I was an obstacle to my dad's happiness, that I should just stay with my mom full time. Their anniversary was 5 days ago. I didn't want to go, but he called my mom to threaten that if I didn't go, he'd go to court. He took his 4 kids, including me, his wife, his parents, and his parents-in-law to celebrate at a nice restaurant. Once there, he said that he had 6 tickets for vacation. I didn't say anything, but then he looked at me and said, "One is for you." I said, "Thanks, but I'm not going." He seemed angry and said, "Okay, I had enough. Why don't you want to go?" "Just because," I said. But then he asked the same questions 5 more times. So to the 6th time I said, "Because I don't like your wife." Then he started asking, "Why?" over and over again. So I ended up telling him the mean things that she said to me. He was seemingly uncomfortable, but told us to finish our meal. No one talked for the rest of the night, and after we finished, I asked my stepdad to pick me up. I haven't spoken to my dad since. He just sent me a message asking if I changed my mind about the trip, but I said no. My cousin told me that my dad is staying at my grandparents' now. His wife texted me yesterday calling me a brat and asking if I was happy for potentially destroying my half-sibling's home life, but I just ignored her. My cousin says that the kids are crying because my dad isn't at home, and she says that I should have just said other things or agreed and then tell him later that I wasn't going. Not the jerk. For a 17-year-old guy, you have some tact, which is incredibly refreshing and makes me optimistic about the future, so good for you. Yes, you could or should have waited to say you weren't going in private, but your dad's behavior after repeatedly asking the same questions makes me think it wouldn't have ended there. So you said no. To your credit, you attempted to not ruin the meal by not answering the following why questions that you were bombarded with. You tried. He wouldn't let it go, so you finally just answered. Nothing being a jerk about that. Now for a grown woman to tell a kid, her stepson no less, that the kid is standing in the way of his father's happiness? Now that's classy. If stepmom and dad want to play stupid games, then they don't get to whine about stupid prices. Not the jerk. You didn't ruin the marriage, she did by not accepting you and your dad as a package deal. She pushed you away, his own son, because she couldn't stand having to share attention. Your dad's marriage was doomed the moment she uttered those words behind his back. You did the right thing by telling the truth to your dad. Make sure to save all of her messages in case she tries to lie her way out of it. Take care, and I hope things improve with your dad. I don't want to see your name on this list again. This story didn't personally happen to me, but it was told to me by someone I trust. I fully believe it to be true, but some details are slightly altered to protect privacy. A friend of mine is retired now, but back in the day he did internal audits for a large bank. This story takes place about 30 years ago when networked computers were less common and paperwork tended to be compiled manually. Bank managers had to submit various reports to their regional offices showing what their branches were up to, and the regional offices would occasionally send out auditors to go through the records and make sure that everything was in compliance. One report that had to be filed monthly was a list of any employees who were in arrears on their own loans. Employees who had trouble managing their own credit were considered to be more at risk of stealing, fraud, or other financial crimes. So I guess the bank wanted to keep track of anyone who may fall into that category. My friend's team is doing an audit at a particular branch, going through the records and looking for any discrepancies. They find a big one. The manager of this branch had been behind on a number of loans he held with the bank, but had been leaving his own name off the report. More records are pulled, and they start looking at everything this guy has ever filed and comparing it to other records. The manager had started doing everything correctly, including himself on the report fairly regularly. At a point about 10 years prior, it suddenly stops, despite the spotty loan repayment continuing for years. Bosses of bosses are called. It's looking like they may have stumbled on years of falsified records and possibly more serious fraud. The manager is definitely getting fired, and depending on what else they find, looking at some serious criminal charges. Finally, they call the manager in to show what they found and ask for an explanation. The manager produces a letter from someone higher up in the bank. Basically, when he started, the manager was just a little too free with his spending and didn't make his monthly loan payments a top priority. His boss wrote a letter saying that having the manager of a bank branch at the top of a list of unpaid loans was an embarrassment. If he wanted to keep his job, he better make sure that his name never appeared on that report again. He was supposed to sort out his financial affairs, but the manager said he interpreted the instruction literally and simply stopped including his own name. It took years before anyone noticed. In the end, the investigation found no other signs of record tampering or financial crime. No one really believed that he actually thought what he was doing was allowed, but the whole thing was just ambiguous enough to give plausible deniability. By the point everything was discovered, the manager had his finances in good order, and he was pretty close to retirement. The whole thing was just sort of waved away as being more trouble than it was worth to deal with, and the manager didn't see any real repercussions. Just like that kid whose parents told him that they didn't want him to bring home any more bad test grades, so they didn't bring them home from then on. I forgot where that was from, but probably from this sub. Am I the jerk for selling my husband's PS5? I, female 35, bought my husband, male 37, a PS5 for his birthday a couple of months ago. He was beyond thrilled because he's a gamer, but it's been a while since he gamed. Let me say that the house has been a literal war zone ever since my husband started playing with the PlayStation. He started having rage fits, losing it, throwing and breaking expensive stuff like headphones and watches and glasses and his phone. He says it's his normal reaction from being frustrated by losing a round in a game. I told him this is no way to live because the house is in a constant state of anxiety, and my husband's behavior, to me, seemed to be worsening because of how easily he could get mad and lash out now. I told him if gaming makes him stressed out, then he needs to quit. He was like, "Okay, I will try to tone it down from now on, but don't blame me for being frustrated with how messed up these games have become lately." Well, on Tuesday I come home and find the place a mess. $300 game chair was broken and all the stuff on the desk thrown on the floor. I asked him about what happened and he nonchalantly told me he lost a round. I lost it on him and told him that I was done cleaning his mess and paying for replacement for every time he destroys something, and let him know that he ran out of chances and the PS5 has now had a negative impact and it needs to go. He said it has nothing to do with the PS5, so I told him the PS5 needs to be sold to pay for damages he caused. He threw a fit, but I sold it online. He called me a monster and said that it was selfish of me to return the gift that was for him. Yes, I get that it's a gift meant for him, but I paid for it. And also, I'm the one who has to deal with damages since I'm the breadwinner in the house. He went into shutdown mode and keeps sleeping instead of spending time with me. Oh no, that is not a normal reaction to anything. Not the jerk, that man needs so much therapy. 100% agreed. My boyfriend and I and all of our friends are gamers, and you know what? We've all yelled from time to time, but breaking stuff? No way. None of that is normal, and I want OP to know this is not normal for even the most stressful games. I'm in a Discord right now watching my boyfriend's best mates play one of the most maddening games of League of Legends I've ever seen. And you know what they're not doing? They're not breaking their belongings or scaring their wives or babies. Not the jerk. At most, I have cried out of frustration, and that was a clear signal to take a break. Well, what do you think? Is it okay to break stuff when you get mad playing a video game or not? Please let us know. Reminds me of the time I tried playing Fortnite. I had to stop, my blood pressure went through the roof. Rule number 1, never trust your travel agent. So I'm working at the reception of a smallish 71-unit hotel in a quieter part of a busy seaside resort. Our hotel is located next to an artificial lake, which is more of a glorified pond really, a leftover from the days when local authorities decided to drain part of a swamp area in order to develop it. The hotel itself is divided into 3 buildings. The main building with the reception, lobby, restaurant, buffet room, etc. And 2 bigger buildings consisting of a ground floor and the first floor where our apartments are located, which either have a pool or garden view. So yesterday I checked in an older couple, late 60s, early 70s. Everything went fine until they asked me about the apartment's location. I said that it was on the first floor, and the husband seemed to be happy, but the woman asked me if they could have an apartment on a higher floor. I told her that we only have ground floor and first floor, which she begrudgingly accepted. so I sent them on their merry way, but I knew that they would show up again because they were allocated a garden view. People like these always want pool view. If their room faces the garden or vice versa, they're never happy. Lo and behold, they were back 10 minutes later to complain about the view and demanding a view of the pool, or so I thought. Wrong. They demanded a lake view apartment. Well, she did. He was trudging behind. I then informed them that there are no apartments with a view to the lake, since all lake view rooms were studios, not apartments, and that their tour operator hadn't contracted any studios with a view to the lake, so I couldn't move them, even if there were any vacancies of said studios, which there honestly weren't. Cue wife going into full Karen mode. Listen to me, young man. I always take this one as a compliment since I'm pushing 50. Our travel agency promised us an apartment with a lake view, and could you at least tell us where we can find the ladder to go into the lake? I told them that there is no such ladder, and that I've never seen anybody swimming in the lake in the decade that I've been working there. So you mean that we were promised to be swimming in that tiny pool of yours? Our travel agency promised us that we could swim in the lake. I said that there still is the option of going to the beach and having a swim there. We are located on an island after all, but she wouldn't have any of it. The 400-meter walk to the beach was way too far for her, and that she would be contacting her local travel agent to find them a different hotel. I was about to say that if their travel agent let them down in suggesting our hotel to spend their holidays, they'd probably mess up a second time, but I only said, "You are free to do so, don't let us detain you any further." To which they stormed off. Well, she did. Her husband just turned around and followed her. And this is why nobody should ever believe in what your travel agency tells or promises you. Always book directly with the hotel. Am I the jerk for going off on my soon-to-be husband for returning my wedding dress? Me, female 29, and my soon-to-be husband, male 33, are getting married soon. Wedding planning has so far been going all right, except for a few things he and I argued about, like the venue and flower girl. Now we've been arguing about my wedding dress. This might sound cliche, but ever since I was young, I dreamed of having my own beautiful wedding dress. I can afford it, but my soon-to-be husband thinks it's not okay to waste a couple of $1,000 on a dress I'm only going to wear once. Yes, he might have a point there, but for me, this is typical price for wedding dresses. And two, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, so why not make sure it's special? Soon-to-be husband still wasn't convinced and suggested I rent a dress instead of buying one. He started saying that I'm being irresponsible with money and brought up how much money I've already put aside to rent a face. He means makeup. And wear fake hair. He means extensions. But I have this vision of what I want to do and look like on my wedding, and I think that it's my right as a bride. I went ahead and purchased the dress, but a day later I found out that it was missing from my closet. I freaked out, but he told me he returned it and got the money back. I was shocked. I asked him why he did that, and he said he thought the dress was ridiculously expensive and that I was wasting money, and again suggested I go rent one. I blew up and went off on him, which I've never done before. He literally took a few steps back and told me to calm down. I said he had no right. I'm the one paying for the dress. He got upset and said that there's no "I'm paying for it myself" in marriage, and that my attitude is setting the tone for what type of dynamic we'll have in our marriage. He kept on about how I must expect him to pay for everything while I keep my money and spend it irresponsibly. But I never tell him how to spend his money. I responded that he gets zero say in how I spend my money whatsoever. He told me that I should grow up and stop with the dream wedding dress cliche, then stormed off to call his mom, who chewed me out, saying she won't let me ruin her son's financial stability with how I deal with money generally. She too urged me to rent a dress or buy a cheaper one, way cheaper than the one I picked, and move on, but I declined. ETA for repeated questions. Yes, he still has the money and said he'll give it back once we agree on a solution. Not the jerk, but please hold, pause, press the button. There are some serious red flags here that you need to look into more closely before you get married. 1. You had a disagreement. You and he are obviously on two sides of the issue, but he took it upon himself to force his solution to be the solution. This is problematic. 2. Where's the money that he got back on the dress? Was it returned to a credit card? Is it your credit card? Was it cash? If so, where's the money? This is important to establish. You said that you spent your own money on this dress. Has he taken that money for himself? Has it gone back to a joint account? Important information for you to have. 3. His mother has put herself in the middle of this argument, not unsurprisingly on the side of her baby. Does she often do this? Do you want to live the rest of your life with her interfering from outside in disagreements that belong squarely within the circle of your household? I'm begging you, look into this more deeply. Do not sweep this under the rug. I know we're taught that marriage is the end-all and be-all, but please do not rush into past indicators that this marriage might be a very pretty trap for you. His mother didn't put herself in the middle. He ran to call his mommy after the argument and invited her into it. Also, OP said in a comment that he now has the money from the dress and is hanging on to it until things are resolved, i.e., she caves and does things his way. Girl, run. You don't want this. Consider it a bullet dodged. Let me put this delicately. Things are not going all right with your wedding planning. You gave many examples of him not respecting you, belittling and undermining your wants for your own wedding, controlling how you should spend your money, and running to mommy when he doesn't get his way. You're lucky you're not married yet. I suggest counseling to make sure you're compatible and will be happy spending your life with this pile of red flags, not the jerk. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her soon-to-be husband? Please let us know. Finance is one of the leading causes of divorce. It's never a good idea to marry someone who you have strong differences with when it comes to finances. Am I the jerk for moving out suddenly and financially doing over my roommate/best friend? So I, 27, female, have been close friends with Tara, 26, female, for about 8 years now. Early on, we made plans to move in together. She shared a 2-bedroom with her boyfriend at the time. They had broken up, and the plan was for him to move out and I'd move into her 2nd bedroom. 3 weeks before moving in, she texted me that they had worked things out and no longer wanted me to move in with her. I was upset because I had already given notice to my apartment and had to move in with my parents. She apologized profusely and had always been a good friend otherwise, so I forgave her. 3 months later, they broke up for good and he moved out, leaving her struggling to pay bills for the 9 months left of the lease. She moved back in with her parents after that in financial ruin, as she put it. Years later, this past summer, we moved in together. I was hesitant initially, but she did all the work finding a place and paying the deposits. It was awesome living with my BFF, and we had a great time until last month. She had a friend with benefits situation with a guy at her work for almost a year. She sat me down and told me that they were making things official and wanted to move in together. So she wanted me to move out when his lease was up in 5 months so he could move in with her. I was livid. I totally blew up at her. I called her a jerk and a selfish friend and told her I would never forgive her for messing me around like this again. This argument ended with both of us in tears. That weekend, while she was staying at her boyfriend's, I packed all my stuff up and moved out. I happened to know someone with a nice 3-bedroom house for rent. It was actually a really good deal that I had only passed up because I had moved in with her, and I lucked out that it was still available. She's been texting me ever since about how I'm doing her over just like her ex did, that I overreacted, and that she can't afford the place by herself. Honestly, I consider our friendship over at this point, but now that I've calmed down, I'm wondering if I might be the jerk. Edit for clarification. My name wasn't on the lease. She handled the paperwork. I didn't want to throw speculations into my post, but I 100% believe she did that on purpose. Second edit. She wanted me to move out in November when her boyfriend's lease was up, not in August when ours would have been. Not the jerk. She can't play games with people's housing. She wanted you out on her time scale so she can play house with her boyfriend. You're rightly upset at being messed around again, and you made the best choice for yourself. This may be going against the tide, but not the jerk. Your friend's history suggests that if her boyfriend's lease were up in 5 weeks, rather than 5 months, she would have still asked you to leave. It's all about her and what she wants. You're disposable to her, and it doesn't matter to her how much she inconveniences you, as long as she gets her way. I don't think she's owed any consideration in return. You found a good living situation, which in this market is no small thing. Why should you stick around living with someone who clearly has no respect for you? Am I the jerk for asking my husband to convert our cat's bedroom into a bedroom for our kid? I'm not entirely sure how to process this situation. My husband, 27 male, and I, 25 female, have been together for 6 years and married for 3. We recently had our son, who is 10 months. We live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and for the past 3 to 4 years, our cat has had her own bedroom. It was never a big deal to me because we didn't have kids. Our couch pulled out into a bed if there was ever an emergency with family or friends, and I will admit we both treat our cat like our daughter. Once we had a kid, I never talked to him about it, but I assumed once our kid got older, we would give him the room. Lately, our kid just stays in our room with us. Recently, I showed my husband some toddler beds, and he asked where we would put it. I respond, in his room. He looks at me like I grew another head. He asked me, "What room?" Then I looked at him crazy. I started talking about how we could convert our cat's room into a nice bedroom for our kid. He got upset. He asked how could I even fix my mouth to suggest we take away his daughter's room. I looked at him confused. Our apartment is big enough for most of her stuff to come out of the room and in the living room and kitchen area. She only has a bed, scratching post, and a few cat toys. The only thing that may be harder to place is the scratching post just because of the height, and it's not even that big. I stood up for myself. I told him how I wasn't kicking out our cat, but our kid is getting older and needs a room. He suggested we buy a new place, but we can't afford that. He told me I was a jerk and stormed into our cat's room. It feels weird. I thought after months of not doing anything, he would jump on the opportunity to get our kid out of our room. He's been in our cat's room for a couple of hours, and I'm starting to feel like a jerk. Edit. A lot of people are asking why I never brought up turning it into a nursery. I'm a new mom. I don't like the idea of my baby being that far away. I know now that I ignored many red flags in this situation. I was blinded by love. I thought that he was supporting my new mom jitters. He wanted kids. I never brought up converting the room earlier because I didn't think I needed to. I wasn't ready for our baby to leave the room, but I didn't think he wanted us to have a teenager still in our room or anything. I'm just confused by all of this, and I don't know what to do. Not the jerk. Let your husband throw his weird little tantrum and then start setting up your kid's room with or without his help. Look, I'm a huge cat person, owned cats all my life and always will, and love them. And even I think your husband is weird about this. Cats don't need rooms, humans do. Simple as that. My daughter is demanding I pay her Ivy League college tuition with my retirement savings. I'm 40, male, and my wife is 40, female. We have a 17-year-old daughter who is in the stage in life where she needs to think about college. My wife and I have agreed that we will pay for her 2 years in community college in our town and 2 years in university to finish her bachelor's. My daughter was on board with this until recently. She now wants to go all 4 years to an Ivy League school because that's what her friends are doing apparently. We have plans of retiring early, and an extra $50,000 or so is really going to push us back on that, so I'm not on board with that idea. Also, it's not like she has tons of money saved to get an apartment elsewhere, so odds are we would have to pay for that as well. It's a firm no for me, which has made my daughter incredibly upset with me. She's been guilting my wife, and now she feels bad for her and thinks we should do it. Apparently, she thinks she's going to miss out on a huge opportunity and will feel excluded from her friend group. Community college is also lame in my daughter's mind, which is an incredibly privileged thing to say in my opinion. Big financial decisions in our marriage require a yes from both of us, and it has always been this way, but now my wife is upset with me too. Now mother-in-law is also involved, and I'm the villain to everyone. We could technically afford it, but as I said before, it would really push back our plans in life, which I'm not okay with. And keep in mind, I'm not forbidding her from doing it, it just won't be on my wife and I's dime. I'm completely indifferent to paying the same amount and her getting loans to cover the rest, should she really want to go that badly. I feel crazy for even posting this because I don't see how I could be the jerk, but since everyone is mad at me, it does make me wonder. You're the jerk if you can afford it. My parents agreed to cover half of wherever I decided to go and made me apply to both cheaper schools and the expensive art schools I wanted to go to, as well as financial aid and scholarships. Then we sat down and plotted out the expenses for each one I was accepted into so they could really explain the financial situation to me. This is her first major adult decision. I think it's best to help her make her own decision. Also, I don't really believe that she said, "I want to be with my friends." That sounds like your interpretation. You're the jerk for doubling down on community college. It is an okay choice, but not a great one. And in your own town? Where she would, I assume, continue to live with you? No, there is a wide gulf between slumming it at the local community college and going Ivy League. And to be honest, if your kid has the ability to be admitted, even if she doesn't go, then that is a lot of wasted potential. Not all courses transfer well, especially in majors that lead to a professional field. So why aren't you guys looking at normal universities? She can go off to college like a normal kid and it won't break the bank. Although, really, come on, man. You can't seriously think, "Oh, I'm gonna retire when I'm 52, even though you can't afford to send your kid to college." You're the jerk. First, if she's capable of getting into an Ivy, you should be supporting her a lot more fully. That's your kid, and Ivies are as good as they get in terms of opportunities after graduation. Second, she has to be accepted first.
Third, take some time to educate yourself about the resources Ivies and other selective private schools offer to the kids they do accept. Some schools, like Stanford, provide free tuition for students from families making less than $150,000 a year. My kid's dad attended a highly selective small college in Oregon, and his parents only paid room and board for the first year. Almost everything else was covered by a combination of public and college endowment need-based aid, merit-based aid, and work study. Dude graduated with one loan for about $4,000. So get brave, do your homework, and if your kid has the potential to shine, help her do it. You're the jerk. You brought her into this world. You owe it to her to set her up for success, especially since you're secure enough for early retirement. You don't go from community college to Ivy. Why'd you even have a kid if you didn't want her to succeed? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or everyone else? Please let us know.
You know why OP's going to retire early? Because he's financially literate.
Am I the jerk for telling my stepkids it's not my fault their mom cheated on their dad? I have 4 kids. 2 are biological, and 2 are stepkids from my husband's first marriage. I consider all of them to be my kids, but for clarity, I have to differentiate. When my stepkids were 12 and 13, it came out that they were not biologically my husband's. It was dramatic, and it rocked the entire family. There was a minute where they were suspicious of me as well, but since I had insisted on testing my biological kids at birth due to issues from my own childhood, this was over before it began. My husband and I continued raising all 4 kids until he passed 2 years ago. His father just passed 6 months ago. The kids are 17, 16, 10, and 9. In his will, his father decided to only leave money to his biological grandkids. This money is to be held in a trust, so even I can't access it. It's not millions, but it's easily enough to pay for each grandkid to go to college and put a down payment on a house. My stepkids viewed him as their grandfather, so they are furious about this. But on a practical level, they need money for college, and now they don't have it. They've been blaming me and hounding me to fix this. I can't and won't. The will is airtight. The money is in trusts that I don't have legal access to. Just to try to do anything would involve, technically, suing the other kids just to harass my sister-in-law and the legal firm into trying to invalidate a will, which would be cruel and pointless. I agree that it's unfair, yes, but it's also not my fault. Their mother is the reason why they're not in the will, not me. I'm not going to pretend to know why she did it, and I don't have any personal feelings about her. She's always been a devoted mother to her kids, which is the only thing I cared about. The rest of her private life is her own business, and this is ultimately her responsibility. I told them to take it up with her, and now they're even angrier that I'm talking bad about their mother, and are blasting me to everyone that will hear that I've always played favorites. Not true. And that I'm not doing anything because I got what I always wanted. Doubly not true. I don't want to lose them or cause more pain over something that I had no part in. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This is a horrible, no-win situation for you and your stepkids. There's literally nothing you can do. The grandfather is definitely the jerk here. How incredibly hurtful. Nah, it's his money, and he might rightfully view his daughter-in-law as evil for betraying his son, and I believe that's where his decision was made. In a way, I don't blame him. That's his life's money. Why is the grandfather the jerk? Only jerk here is the other mother. Grandfather has no obligation. He's free to give the money to whoever he wants to. Why would he give it to someone who are not his family? That mother should have told everyone about it much earlier. Biological family should be worried about the children's future. He treated those kids as his own grandchildren for the first dozen years of their lives. Then, through no fault of their own, they're deprived of an inheritance. Sounds like their extended family might have started treating them differently. And now Grandpa went out of his way to deny them college money. That's low. Gramps was the jerk. The only reason the family is wrecked is because of the mother who cheated. Grandfather has no obligation to fund the kids' education. Their mother and biological father should be worried about it. What's the mother doing? Why is she letting her kids blame the OP? Can you take the older kids to 1. A lawyer who can explain to them clearly, and 2. Family therapy so they can process their feelings? They aren't being that rational, but that's why they still need you to parent them, as thankless and hard as it is right now. They're so blind, they need someone to blame. You are not the jerk, given there's no legal avenue even if you wanted to be there. My dad's will was 5 pages, crystal clear. I shut down a greedy brother by reading 1 sentence. If any heir argues the terms of this will, they forfeit their share to the others.
Shut him down right quick. Just sign this document that will dock you 11.5 hours. I'm a middle school teacher who speaks fluent Spanish, thanks to growing up in the West Valley. Go Suns. The fact that I'm bilingual has given me many opportunities, including one where a teacher in charge of an English language learner, ELL, important acronym for later, program gave me the opportunity to tutor students twice weekly, plus an additional 15 minutes per every hour worked as prep time. Okay, cool. So Mondays and Fridays I punch in 15 minutes before 2:20 during my 7th hour prep, then punch out at 3:30 when the kids left. No problem, right? Wrong. At the end of the year, I get an email saying I'm being docked 11.5 hours that were punched in before the end of the day. I was livid. They claimed I'm getting double paid, but I looked through everything I signed off on and didn't remember seeing any restrictions on when I was to punch in for these hours. We met in the office, and the district representative had me sign this document, and she showed me the contract I signed. Nowhere did it specify when I was to punch in those hours, and I brought this to both people's attention who were present, but Federal Action Plan office lady persisted. Just sign it. You can't get double paid. Enter malicious compliance. I signed quickly, this time using my middle name, which happens to be Forget This Noise. I happen to know the person at district office, my savior who will be reviewing this paperwork, and know that she'll either ask me what's up or to have me re-sign an obvious non-signature. Like clockwork, I get a phone call on my 7th hour prep from my savior. She asked why I signed like this and why I'm being docked. I explained my working with the 2 new students who don't speak any English all year and even teaching them both English all year. I explained that no one said anything all year and that I'd have made the adjustment to get paid those hours the entire school year. My savior says, "Wait a minute, you were on your prep time, right? And you're bilingual? Do you have a certification?" All answers were yes. My next paycheck was $3,500 more than my standard paycheck, coming out of the Federal Action Plan lady's budget for federal action plans. I was very confused at first. It appears that I can punch in during my contract hours if it's on my scheduled prep, and because I have all of my endorsements and my direct supervisor on campus doesn't, I get paid as an ELL leader on campus, quite the stipend. So what was supposed to be a $345 deduction in pay for me turned out to be 10 times greater as a deduction from their department paid directly to me. So looks like she was right all along. I can't get double paid, but looks like I can get double quintuple paid. Am I the jerk for not telling a guy what I do for work and letting him pay for my drinks the whole evening? My friend Grace invited me to a board game bar to play and have drinks with her, her boyfriend, and one of their friends, Nick. We went to get drinks in pairs, Grace going with her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Nick and I stayed at the table and vice versa. So Nick and I had plenty of time to talk, just the 2 of us. Nick started the night by telling me about his recent career change. He decided to quit his previous job, go to a coding boot camp, and he just got a job as a developer 1 or 2 months ago. He was very proud of himself and his new salary and told me this multiple times. He never asked me what I do for work, but talked about his new job quite a bit, occasionally saying, "Sorry, you don't understand that." During the entire evening, I never told him I have been working as a software engineer for the past 4 years because he never asked, and honestly, I found it a bit entertaining. When it came to the drinks, he invited me to every single one. "Don't worry about it. It's not a problem with my developer salary." I told him multiple times he doesn't have to pay for me, but he isn't interested. At the end of the night, when we were saying our goodbyes, he took out his phone and sent me a friend request on Facebook. My job is listed in my profile, so that was when he realized that I'm a software engineer. He asked me if that's true that I'm a software engineer, and I answered yes. He then asked me why I hadn't told him. Why did I let him believe I was a cashier like Grace used to be? I never implied that. And why did I let him pay for everything when I probably earn more than he does? I told him that he never once asked about it, and it was his fault, he assumed. He could have simply asked me about my job, but he only wanted to brag about his. But if he wants me to, I can pay him back for the drinks. He was angry and said that I made a fool out of him. I think he did, not me. But now Grace and her boyfriend are on his side too, saying that it would have cost me nothing to tell him early in the evening, and I only kept it to myself for my own entertainment. Well, I did find it entertaining, but I don't really feel like I did anything wrong. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He wanted to brag, and he was a jerk. He deserved this lesson. Not only are you not the jerk, you're an absolute legend. Not the jerk. You didn't ask him to pay for your drinks, and you did tell him he didn't have to. He insisted. He was a jerk for assuming that you didn't have a job that would leave you comfortable, especially comfortable enough to buy your own drinks. He was bragging and showing off, only to learn that he was making a fool of himself. Josh is on the grill until 11:55, so stop pestering him and do your own station. Back in college, I worked at an on-campus fast food place. Your basic burgers, fries, wraps, and small salads. My shift started at 11:25 doing wraps until 11:55 when Josh left and I manned the grill and someone else did the wraps. Now, Josh was a typical Josh, and it was his way or the highway. He'd get really mad when I'd throw more burgers on the grill or flip something while he was trying to chat up the dishwasher. I did this because he had no understanding of how much food was required to feed college kids during the small breaks between classes. Eventually, he complained enough that I was told, "Josh is on the grill until 11:55, so stop pestering him and do your station." So I did. I stopped touching the grill. The next shift, he leaves at 11:55, and I get on the grill and immediately throw down 40 frozen raw burger patties. 2 minutes later, the cashier starts yelling, "Where are the burgers?" "Sorry, I just got on the grill, and Josh only had 5 in the warmer and 3 in the window. I know we always have about 100 students between 11:55 and 12:20, and they almost all get the burger meal, but I was told not to touch the grill." The burgers finish after a few minutes, and the next batch goes on, but the grill has cooled a little, so they take even longer. The line of kids waiting for food is longer than the line ordering, and management is upset. I got chewed out for not being fast enough, and I just ask, "Do you want raw burgers or to talk to Josh?" It only took one more shift of this for them to realize that my meddling was actually what kept us afloat during the lunch rush. I'd often cook an entire grill of burgers while he was swinging and missing with the dishwasher. They eventually printed out a sheet of how many burgers and chicken, etc. needed to be prepared for certain rush times and gave Josh a very stern talking to about how to be a team player. Also, Josh sucked because he'd cook all the burgers well done, like really well done. Then they'd sit in the warmer for another 5 to 15 minutes. He didn't know how to rotate either, so you were eating hockey pucks. He ruined so much ground beef. He eventually got moved to salads and stock because he couldn't be trusted with anything that was fast-paced. Management saw how much faster everything moved when he wasn't joshing everything up. Am I the jerk for reporting an employee at my gym and getting him fired? Let me explain this because I wasn't sure that I did something wrong, but some people told me that it might have been too much, and I'm not sure now. I, 28 female, go to a gym kinda close to my house. My husband, who's 30, doesn't go with me since I go way too early for him, and there's one where he works, so he goes there. I usually wake up at 6 a.m. and get there by 6:45 a.m. to 7. I do not talk to anyone there unless I have to. Reception, maybe ask an employee for help. If I see anyone I know, which has only happened like twice in the last year that I've been going there. This only goes for context that I'm not flirting or anything with anyone there. I'm happily married and I go there to work out and leave. About a month ago, maybe a bit more, I don't know, there was a new employee who would always say good morning to me, even if he wasn't in the reception when I got there. He would just walk up to me wherever I was working and say good morning. I would say it back because, well, it's called being polite. I never engaged in a conversation with him, and I also use my wedding ring every day. Well, now's the issue. To access the gym, you need to put your finger so it can scan your fingerprint, and then your picture and info shows on the screen of the reception. Last week, I got a message from an unknown number asking how I was, etc. When I asked who it was, it said that it was this guy, and that he hoped I wouldn't get upset he took my number from the info. I said I was upset, and I'm married. He said he saw the ring but wasn't sure, so wanted to ask. Okay. I said that I am in fact married, and that's why I use a wedding ring, and he said okay and stopped texting. Since I didn't want to walk straight to the managers, because he would know it was me and what I was doing, I decided to send an email to the gym explaining everything and how I felt my privacy was violated. My husband agreed completely. They sent an email back apologizing and saying they would handle it. The next day I walked to the gym and he wasn't there. I assumed he was fired since the next days he wasn't there either. We had my brother-in-law and wife and other family members around, and we were talking about it, and brother-in-law said how crappy that was and I couldn't mess with someone's job like that. The guy apologized and stopped, so why did I keep going? Some of them agreed with him, and others said he was the one messing with his job, not me. But now I feel kinda bad. I mean, he did stop when I said I was married. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. He absolutely should not have pulled your phone number from their records and was rightfully fired. People should be able to go to the gym without being hit on. And without the fear of having their private information used. I hate giving out any information at places because things like this freak me out. In the EU, that guy could have gotten that gym into some serious trouble. Extremely illegal what he did. I'm glad the gym did the right thing. Not the jerk. And in fact, I'd be suspicious of brother-in-law after that, because how does he not see a problem with that? OP. He said I acted like a Karen by complaining to the manager that in this economy, it's seriously messed up to play with someone's job like that. I mean, I would think that in this economy, someone would know not to risk their job like that. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have reported the employee or not? Please let us know. Reminds me of the time I got a Facebook message from the cashier at the store I went to that day. And how'd that go? We dated for 4 years. Lucky him. 4Top comes in at 10 to closing. Thinks it's okay since they just want something small. I remembered this recently, thought I would share. Nothing in the world is worse than a customer who comes in right before closing, sees we're about to close, and says something like, "We just want something small," as if that makes it okay. It had been slow all night. Our side work was done, silverware rolled up, and we were ready to head home. I was one of 2 servers there, the rest had left. A 4Top comes in at 10 to closing, and we looked on horrified as they noted we closed in 10 minutes, but then justified it by saying, "We only want a few drinks and maybe an appetizer." Even the hostess just stood there, looking at them like, "Are you really going to stay?" Yup, they were. They settled into a booth, laughing and hooting it up. They had clearly already been drinking. Their server was my coworker, a woman who we called Mom. She was much older than the rest of us, and the giver of advice and hugs when anyone needed it. She had worked there for years and didn't take crap. She purposely ignored the table for 9 minutes and then approached. They started ordering food, burgers, a steak, no appetizers. Server cuts them off. "Oh, sorry, but our kitchen closed about a minute ago. We aren't serving food anymore." They all looked annoyed. "What do you mean? We just sat down." Server: "I know, but we closed at 11 p.m. as the hostess told you when you came in. It's past 11. Someone at the table: "Can we get something from the bar?" Server: "Oh, sorry, but the bar closed 2 minutes ago. We aren't serving drinks anymore." The table starts to yell at her. "Then why did the hostess seat us when she knew you were closing? This is bull." Server: "Why did you sit when you knew we were closing in 10 minutes? Their mouths dropped open at her gall. I was too shocked, watching this unfold, afraid she'd get in trouble. I thought they'd ask for the manager, but they didn't. They got up and headed towards the door while loudly complaining about the injustice they had endured. They claimed they would never come back again and we had lost their business. When they were gone, she looked at me and shrugged. She was the first person who taught me that sometimes the customer wasn't right and it was okay to call them out on it. All restaurants should have a last seating 30 minutes before close. Wish mine did. This would be so much easier on everyone to just establish an effective target to lock the doors. I think it's a symptom of our tipping culture. The boss doesn't have to pay you a reasonable hourly wage, so they don't care how much longer you will have to stay and hope for a good tip to finish the night. If you were paid a fair hourly wage, they would be howling to lock the doors on time. The customer is always right refers to how they want their food prepared. If a customer wants to ruin their steak, for example, by having it well done, that's their choice and they are fine to have it. It does not mean anything else. Anyone co-opting that phrase to mean taking mistreatment for low pay is okay is an outright jerk or just plain stupid. The end. Neighbor is increasingly upset about my yard, but I'm disabled. I've gotten a few notices from the city in the last few months about my yard, and they've all been really weird. Tiny things like a bush sticking out of the sidewalk and needs to be trimmed, and I look and cannot for the life of me find a bush that is doing that, so I just cut them all. This has happened 3 times now for things that are just not an issue. I can't even see it. Recently, I found out one of my neighbors has been reporting me and that she does this to everyone. In the last 2 months, I've not been as attentive to the yard because of my disability, an autoimmune disease. It's flared up and I've pretty much been couch-ridden. On top of that, I tore my ACL the one good week I had playing soccer, so I'm double disabled at the moment. I used to pay for a lawn service twice a week and do the rest myself, but I got laid off during lockdown and had to find a new job quick and lost a couple of roommates in my house, which docked me around $45K annually. I refinanced the house and can just barely afford it, and am seeking more roommates, but it's been tough to find someone in my area. But I just can't afford a lawn service right now, and my dad is old and can only come help once a month or so. Today I got this letter from the upset neighbor, and it's unsigned.
Miss OP, we are concerned neighbors that have noticed that you have let a lot of time go by without regular caring for your lawn or the mass of weeds that keeps getting higher on the side of your house. We were not pleased to see another neighbor cutting your grass. Is it too much trouble to ask for you to call a local person to cut your grass on a bi-weekly basis? Paul is a neighbor who cuts lawns in the neighborhood, and he may be available at this number. There are too many rentals that do not care for their property. You are an owner and are invested in your home. Please take care of it.
They sent it with a stamp through the mail so I wouldn't know who it was. My regular kind neighbor was talking to this woman and heard she was going to report me again, and she and her son mowed my lawn to prevent that. I didn't even ask them to do this, but I did thank them profusely. This kind neighbor doesn't want to tell me who the upset one is. Any advice at all? I'm really tired from all of my health issues, and this is just bumming me out. Usually I can make cookies and charm an angry person, but I can't even walk right now. I don't have an HOA, and when I called the number on my city notice, they couldn't give me any city code or documents saying I have to keep my yard in any particular shape. No idea what standard I need to keep my yard to or how to get it there. It's not even that bad. I don't think it needs much past what my dad can do. They weren't pleased to see another neighbor cutting your grass? This lady can buzz off. Who cares who mows it? I got called in for emergency at the wrong hospital. Background. I had been a doctor at a very reputed hospital in my country about 3 years back, well before lockdown. I had worked there for a year before my husband and I had decided to move to another country. I had resigned a few months before the travel to take care of the visa and all of the other stuff we would need to do before moving to another country. During this time, I would still keep getting calls from the hospital to check on this or that patient, and I would politely tell them that I don't work for them anymore. I hadn't exactly worked in the ER, but had been the first one to be called in case of any of the issues with the patients that had already been admitted in the wards, till the actual attending doctor of the patient came in. Each ward had its own duty mobile phone, and that's where the calls came from. The calls had happened very frequently, and every time I would tell the nurse who had called that I didn't work there anymore. I was very polite and nice, as I had really loved working there, and though I didn't anymore, seeing the calls reminded me of that time. As the time approached for us to fly, I stopped attending the calls, hoping they would eventually stop. It's been now 2 years after we moved, and we are now in a country with a completely different time zone. Though I have a new local number, I still keep the old number from my country active. I still occasionally see a missed call from the hospital displayed on my phone when I wake up. I can't receive the calls due to 1. Huge roaming costs, 2. The calls came mostly when I'm asleep, due to the time differences, and 3. The phone is almost always on silent. However, a few days back in the evening, I noticed there were 5 missed calls, all from the hospital. I had received them during the afternoon, which meant they were made when it was late midnight in my country. This alarmed me, as usually I only get 1 missed call. That too during the morning hours of my country. I immediately topped up the mobile and made a call to the hospital. I asked for the in-charge nurse of that particular ward. Since my number was still stored as the contact physician, the nurse who attended immediately called for the in-charge nurse and said, "Dr. OP is called." I think she was probably a junior nurse, as she also seemed a bit tense. As soon as the in-charge nurse was on call, I explained the situation to her. I told her that I had received several missed phone calls in an emergency hour, but didn't work there anymore. She was surprised and immediately apologized. I explained to her I had calls, not because it was an inconvenience to me, because it wasn't, but if they tried to reach out to a doctor who doesn't work there in cases of emergencies and expected them to come, it could cost the patient their life. I had never received 5 missed calls before and hoped that the patient for whom I was called in for was all right. She assured me that everything was okay and thanked me for letting her know. She apologized again and told me she would delete my number immediately. I thanked her and hung up.
Somehow, this time I was sure I wouldn't receive any more calls. That kind of made me a bit sad in a weird way, but patients' lives matter more. I honestly hope they get it all sorted out and call the right doctor from now on. Neighbors tell me to stop using my hammer because they have a new baby. My neighbor just rang my doorbell to tell me his wife said to stop hammering. I was dumbfounded. I just kind of stared and said, "Excuse me?" And he informed me that we would be unable to make any sort of noise for the next few months because of their new baby. To which I laughed in his face and closed the door. And now his wife is screaming at my door, and he's messaging me to please just do what his wife says. So some background. My spouse bought this house in 2011. Both houses are single-family detached homes. Both lots are 1.5 size lots, so there's roughly 33 feet between our houses compared to the 6 feet for the rest of the street. Neighbor husband was already in his house. I moved in 8 years ago. Shortly after, saw the neighbor for the first time, and it was someone I've known since I was 4 years old. We went to school all the way through high school together. We're now 40 years old. 3 years ago, he met a woman. She had at the time a 2-year-old daughter. She would stay at his house, and I would constantly find the kid wandering the streets. They would just send her outside with no supervision, no toys, no fenced yard, and expect her to entertain herself. The kid was, and still is, nothing but a brat. 2 years ago, she moved in with him and brought her daughter with her. I run a daycare, so my yard is full of fun toys, but we also have 3 other fenced-off areas, one for our pool in the summer, one for our dogs, and one for our hot tub. All these have separate fences and self-closing gates, plus my external fence is 6 feet tall. During 2020, when lockdown hit, the kids were doing virtual schooling from home. She never actually did it. She would be ringing my doorbell in the middle of the day asking me to open my yard for her to play. I would explain that she can't be here when I have daycare kids and my daughter will come out to play after supper. She went to their backyard, dragged patio furniture to my fence, and climbed over it. Who knows how long she was actually out there, but she decided she was done and then couldn't get out. The latch for my main gate is at the very top so that the kids can't open it when my back is turned. She started screaming, so I ran out in a panic. I took her home, explained what had happened to her mom, and her mom gave me crap for just not allowing her to play. I face $100,000 fine if she's caught on my property during daycare hours. I explained this. She still snapped and called me a jerk. I left it at that. It happened a handful of more times. I started sending them daycare invoices. Still kept happening. I finally told them I would have to call the police next time, which I did. Except this time, Mom and Grandpa were both sitting outside on the stairs and watched her do it. Also, never bothered to come help her open the gate when she started screaming. Police told them to stop or Mom would face charges. I now have proximity sensors at the top of my fence, and I get a notification if anything goes over my fence. It's gotten better as she has gotten older. So last summer, we set up our above-ground pool. Just ordered a new pump system and heater. Pool was half filled. I had also just done up all my planters. I casually glance at my security cameras and see her by the pool. I head out. Main gate was open as the neighborhood kids were running from yard to yard playing. She took it upon herself to go to the pool and take buckets of soil from my planters and dump it into the pool. $400 of damage to my brand new $1,000 pump and heater system that was up for less than 4 hours. I snapped and screamed at her to get out of my yard and to not come back. She's not allowed in my yard at all unless me or my spouse is out there. Now to current time. They had a new baby last week, and me hammering in my basement is disturbing them in their house 33 feet away. And they expect me to wait until the fall to finish my project. So I'm currently sitting on my bench outside, enjoying a glass of water with my outdoor speakers playing metal while I mow the lawn, which is much louder than the little bit of hammering I was doing. I'll finish that tonight after dark. Edit. Lots of people are saying to call the police. I do call the police when I feel it's necessary. We live in a major crime area, and they're always busy with that. If I call, because it's non-violent and they recognize the address, it's at least 24 hours or usually not at all. As for the concerns about her wandering the neighborhood, I'm in a smaller city. My kid has been playing by herself in the neighborhood with regular check-ins since she was 4. I have no issues with that. At 2 and 3, when she was originally doing it, was ridiculous. As for saying not to let my daughter play with her, I cannot take my daughter's entire friend group, which is exactly what would happen. We are one of 3 houses in a row with kids.
House 1 has 3 kids, House 2, the problem house, has 2 kids, and House 3, mine, has 1. House 1 and 2 all go to the same school. They're already outside playing by the time my daughter gets home. My daughter does activities on Saturday and Sunday mornings, so the same thing. So not allowing my daughter to play with one kid also takes away 4 others. Have you ever had a neighbor you just couldn't stand? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. I've got a co-host I can't stand, I tell you that much. Am I the jerk for leaving a dinner date after he fed his dogs a better meal than us? Title screams of entitlement, but let me explain. I started casually dating a guy 2.5 months ago. We have gone on several dates, such as movies or dinner at restaurants and the arcade at the pier near the ocean. It's been a really pleasant time, and I don't want you guys to think I don't appreciate this guy, because I do, but this really rubbed me the wrong way. As for who has been paying for the dates, we usually split 50-50. He has paid for me once, and I've paid for him twice, but the rest is split. So he knows that I have a gastro-reflux disease, severe acid reflux that I'm on medication for. I can't eat anything that has red sauces, barbecue sauce, or artificial dyes such as red or blues. Yes, the medications help, but only if I'm sticking to a pretty clean diet. I can't even eat hamburger because of the red dye they use. When I eat the things mentioned above, I feel like I'm having a heart attack. As I said, he knows all of this. We've talked about it several times. So he invites me over to his place and says he wants to make dinner. He makes a point to tell me to make sure you have a strong appetite, so I didn't eat anything at all since breakfast, and I was starving after working all day. So I arrive at 6 p.m. and I see him making steak, eggs, potatoes, and corn on the cob, the small ones that you put in pasta salad. It looked and smelled delicious. He puts on a movie while we wait, so I'm in the living room the entire time he's cooking. Well, he keeps going back and forth between the kitchen and living room, and on his last trip back, he brings out our plates, and much to my surprise, it's pizza. I just kind of look at him and ask where the steak and eggs were, and he pretty bluntly said that that was for his dogs, 2 German Shepherds, and stated that they eat better than he does. I reminded him that I couldn't eat pizza, red sauce, and he starts arguing that he made sure to not put too much sauce on it and kept telling me to just try it. I asked if he had anything else, and he said no. I told him sorry, but I needed to go, and I excused myself. On the way home, I grabbed myself something to eat. Well, he calls me, and it sounds like he's having a meltdown. Says he can't believe I made him feel like that, and that the pizza was homemade, and he made sure not to put too much sauce on it, but he knows I can't have it at all, and said something about adding sugar to it, etc. Said I've showed my true colors. My friends also think I'm overreacting here, and said I'm acting jealous of his dogs. Am I the jerk? No, not the jerk. This is what casual dating is for. He seems to have confused dislike of strong sauce, hence the sugar, for an actual medical condition. But it is odd that he can't seem to understand the simple medical explanation. Not sure this has anything to do with the dogs. It worsens the offense because he had all this food she could have eaten and that he's perfectly capable of preparing, but he gave it to someone who can eat other stuff and gave her something cheap and bland in comparison that she can't even eat. The pizza wasn't served due to lack of skills, budget, or time, but as part of a deliberate performance where he invited her to watch him make superior food for someone else. Not sure what satisfaction he gets out of that, but not relationship material. Not the jerk. None of this would make serving someone food they can't eat acceptable. It just eliminates every possible lame defense. This guy deliberately put on a performance about the food he was preparing. He got her worked up and expecting something really special, even prepared it in front of her, and then pulled a bait and switch for something he knew she couldn't eat, and tried to guilt her into going against her medical diet by pulling the jealousy card. Nope, he's testing her boundaries to see if he can be controlling. Oh my goodness, not the jerk. You dodged a massive bullet here, and I'm glad he showed his true colors early on. Anyone who minimizes or disregards your dietary restrictions isn't just toxic, but an actual health hazard. The fact that he came unglued after you left and railed at you over the phone shows that he has a massive insecurity issue. And I own a very spoiled dog. I absolutely home cook for the dude from time to time. But is he doing that consistently? That's expensive. Don't lose any sleep over this dude. He's a total mess, and you handled him with more tact than others would have. Just try the food that would put you in extreme pain? Oh man, I'm mad just reading that. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the guy she was casually dating? Please let us know.
That pizza sounds lit though. Let me get a slice, bruh.
Am I the jerk for failing a student, giving them a reality check, and then ruining their college plans? I'm a high school chemistry teacher in a district where chemistry is required to graduate. I recognize that many students aren't scientifically or mathematically inclined, and having an ADHD kid has confirmed firsthand that even trying your best may not guarantee success in certain subjects. For this reason, I make my class as stress-free for my students as possible. Grades are determined mainly by homework and participation. Only a small percentage is exam-based. I also offer a weekly extra credit assignment that I introduce on Monday and have due on Friday. It's the same every time. Watch a 5-minute long video about our current topic, then write a 3-2-1 about it. 3 things they learned, 2 things that they found surprising and interesting, and 1 question that they still had about the video. I even accept silly answers like, where did this guy buy that mole plushie from? Even if you perform poorly on exams, turning in your homework and completing at least half of the extra credit assignments will guarantee you at least a B. The majority of my students have A's, are motivated during class, and their standardized testing scores indicate a strong understanding of chemistry. Then there's my student, Levi. I don't think Levi is a bad kid in any way, but he is very disrespectful and never turns in homework or extra credit. I've sent Levi to a counselor to discuss if there's a reason he can't do his homework and if we could help. Nothing came of that. I held multiple parent meetings to discuss Levi's lack of effort and that he would not graduate 11th grade unless he changed. His mother would insist that I give Levi another chance and she would stay on top of him. There were never any improvements. The last day of school is on Friday. Levi has a 34.6 in my class. He approached me last week after school and asked how he could raise his grade. I encouraged him to study for the final exam, but the exam is only 3% of his final grade and wouldn't be enough. Because he failed both semesters, he doesn't have the option to make up a semester in summer school and will have to repeat the 11th grade. Levi begged me because he and his friends were planning to attend the same college, and if he were held back, he'd be left behind. I told him, Levi, your conduct and lack of effort will not work in college or the real adult world. You're not ready for the complete adulthood that comes with college. Your grade is the one you earned, and that's final. Levi looked devastated and left. Later, his mother emailed me saying she wished I had invested more in Levi. I hate having to fail a student, but I feel Levi needed a harsh reality check, and he gave me no choice. It would also be unfair to my students who did try. I talked about this with some family members, and many told me I could have taught Levi a lesson without ruining his future, and that I went too far with my words. Again, I didn't enjoy it, but still believe it was necessary. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You did everything you could. Levi is at the point where he doesn't need his hand held all the time, and he needs to take initiative for his own grades. You had opportunities. You can't force him to do them. You didn't ruin his future. He's doing that to himself. Also, not going to college when he expected is not ruining his life. Many people go to college after a year off or even later in life. OP, not the jerk, because you gave them an easy minimum. His college professors won't care if he fails or not. It's time for him to grow up and stop letting his mother protect him with excuses. You also had multiple meetings with his mother and counselor. Everything was laid out for what he needed to do to pass. Failing a student is hard, but he needs to learn that his actions, or lack thereof, have consequences. You may have saved his family from a very expensive lesson of him dropping out after his first year in college. Definitely not the jerk. I'm guessing your friends throwing around this ruining his future idiocy aren't teachers. You did try. You just listed the several ways you tried. Levi did not try. Therefore, Levi fails the class. You don't do him any favors by sending him to college with the work ethic he's shown in your class. Why are you even questioning yourself? Not the jerk. Well, what would you have done in this situation? Would you have failed Levi or not? Please let us know.
I would have told his mama that money can solve anything, as long as she sends it by tonight.
Think I witnessed a divorce. I'm a server in a fine dining restaurant that is relatively popular in my city. Had a couple visiting from where we later found out was Texas, we think, come in from dinner. At the start of the meal, they seemed like a great couple, super friendly and really excited to be there. They opted to do one of our tasting menus with the optional wine pairing and an added course. All in all, their tab was around $800 before tip. This becomes relevant later. So the evening goes by. they're enjoying everything and everything's going great. They love the food and they love me. At one point in the evening, I got a little busy, so I did not notice that the husband had gotten up from the table right away. When I go over there to check on their second to last course, I notice that he's not at the table or in the restroom. I stop by to check in with the wife to see if he stepped away for a call or something like that. This poor woman looks up to me and just goes, "I don't think he's coming back." Normally, I would be very good at holding in my shock, but in almost 10 years in the industry, this is the first time that's ever happened to me at a table. In an attempt to keep the mood light and save this lady's evening, while not getting overly personal with the guest, I try to make a few jokes with her, one of which was, "So do we hate him now or what?" She replied, "Well, he's my husband, so that's not really an option." Folks, my jaw hit the floor. At this point, the wine has started to hit her and she's really panicking. To her credit, she kept it together enough that if you weren't directly next to the table, you would not notice. She also went through the rest of the tasting solo, which again, major props to her. After she finishes the meal, we're trying to do everything we can to turn the night around. Offer to pay for her Uber since her husband ditched her, but she refused since their hotel was an hour away from the restaurant. She decides to sit at the bar while she's waiting for her car to get there. She asked for a shot of tequila, and we were happy to oblige because all of us are still flabbergasted. Husband finally calls her to tell her that he's cut the vacation short and is on his way to the airport. Her car gets there right as she's telling us this, and the last thing we hear from her is, "Well, now I have to go figure my life out." For the rest of the evening, this is all any of us can talk about, collectively trying to Nancy Drew our way into what could have happened at that table to cause this. All at once it hits us that we probably just witnessed the initiation of a divorce. And one final note, the lady paid the whole tab and still tipped over 20%. I've watched a couple of friends end their marriages over the years. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it. This is the wrong way. Am I the jerk for refusing to tutor my cousin and proofread his essays for free? I, 28 female, am a PhD student in writing who teaches gen ed writing classes, mostly freshmen and sophomores, at my university. I also tutor a lot of high school students in my hometown over summer breaks and have helped people go from failing their English classes to getting to a C or a B level within the summer. Because of this, I get a lot of my tutoring students from referrals, either from parents or from teachers. I charge $60 for an hour of tutoring, and no one I've worked with has ever felt as though that's too much. In fact, several parents have insisted I take more money because of the work I've done with their kids. My younger cousin just finished his junior year of high school and has really struggled with writing. He failed English 1 as a freshman, failed it again in summer school between freshman and sophomore year, squeaked by with a D in his sophomore year, failed English 2 in the summer school before junior year, and again passed with a D during his junior year. He now needs to complete English 3 in summer school and English 4 his senior year, or he won't be able to graduate on time. I've offered before to help tutor at a discount, $15 to $20 an hour, but his parents insisted he didn't need my help, and especially not such expensive help. This time around, they came to me begging for help because the situation is down to the wire. They want me to work closely with him multiple times a week during the time he's in summer school and meet with him twice a week all school year. I'd be giving him general writing tutoring while also helping him proofread every writing assignment. The issue here is that summer and upcoming academic year, I'm working on my dissertation and teaching 2 classes a semester. I normally don't tutor during the school year because my students and my own work need 100% of my attention. I was planning on taking only 1 tutoring student this summer because I have such an intense research and writing agenda. I told them I'd work over the summer twice a week for $15 per hour-long session, a pretty significant cut, and then once a week for an hour and a half during the school year for $25 a session, since my time is so crunched then. They were furious at this and said they couldn't believe I'd have the nerve to charge them when my cousin is so in need. I then knocked it down another $5 per hour, but they said they wouldn't accept anything but free. I said I wouldn't work for free. They've now spread this to the whole family, and a lot of people have called me petty and selfish for trying to make money off family, and that if my cousin doesn't graduate with his friends, it'll be my fault. I feel awful for him, but I just can't work for free when I'd already be overextending myself. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. If what you do isn't valuable, why do they need it so badly? They feel entitled to your time and energy because you're family. But as a PhD student, I feel your boundaries are extremely reasonable. both in terms of getting paid for your time and limiting the time spent tutoring during the school year, and your offer was quite generous. Their reaction is unacceptable, and they're trying to manipulate you into changing your boundaries to serve them. I wouldn't. Good luck. Not the jerk. Don't ever lower your rates that much, not even for a friend or family. If you have a possibility to earn more, you would be doing exactly the same job for them that you do for clients who pay 4 times more. You would basically just be throwing money in the trash. Don't sell your professional skills cheap to your relatives. Am I the jerk for forwarding "stay away from my man" messages to the boyfriend they were about? I am friendly with an older guy at work, Dan. We have to travel for work sometimes. He's more like a work friend than a real close friend. But I got this voicemail, a call from a girl that sounded drunk and slurring her speech, telling me that I ought to stay away from her man, Daniel. At first, I thought it was a wrong number. I'm in a committed relationship with another woman and don't have anything going on with any man at all. And I also didn't connect the name Daniel to work Dan at all. We just aren't close enough for him to come to mind. A week later, I listened again, and I realized she did mean it for me and was talking about Dan from work. She said something indistinct about Seattle, which is where Dan and I had just taken a work trip to, along with our manager Lisa. So I saved the voicemail and I sent it to Dan. I'll just quote the exchange. "Is this your girl?" "That's Irene. What's going on? What is she calling you about?" I have no clue how she even got this number. I only ever met her at the company Christmas party last year, and we never talked since then. You should talk to her, to be honest. This was out of nowhere? Yeah, I literally thought it was a wrong number at first. Anyway, you really need to talk to her about whatever she's feeling upset about. That's something that needs to be worked out in a relationship. Yeah, I'll talk to her. Thanks. End quote. Anyway, a few days later, I got another voicemail from the same number, and she sounded more sober. She said that it was real shady of me to send something she did drunk and regretted to her boyfriend and not even try to talk to her. I feel like it was getting kind of inappropriate that my coworker's girl was sending me these messages about stuff that seemed like conversations they need to have privately in their own relationship. This might be shady, but I sent that voicemail to Dan too, saying, "Hey man, I hate to say this, but you seriously need to sort this crap out with your girl. I don't know what she's on about, and I honestly want no part in this. I'm getting the impression she's reaching out to me because she has some issues with what you're doing with work travel. If that's something you're doing and she's not okay with, y'all seriously need to work it out between yourselves." He replied saying he was sorry. He hadn't wanted her to call me at all, let alone twice. I blocked her number, and I feel kind of bad about it because it seems like she's feeling insecure about something. But I also feel like if she has a problem with something her boyfriend is doing, she needs to take that up with him, not me. Like, I didn't say this, but I really think that if you feel like you have to threaten other people to stay away from your partner, that relationship has run its course anyway. Why even be with someone you don't trust to stay loyal without you forcing it? Am I the jerk for forwarding these voicemails? Nothing to feel bad about, not the jerk. Totally inappropriate for her to drag her boyfriend's coworkers into their drama. If she continues to harass you, tell him you will speak to HR or even the police. She's risking his job doing that stuff as well. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Irene? Please let us know. Entitled parent tries taking my emotional support dog. I have pretty bad PTSD, and I also have a tic disorder along with anxiety, so me plus people don't work out. My dog is completely trained and is meant for panic attacks, may I add. So I'm walking through the mall with my large lab mix named Tiger. He has his vest on, which clearly states he is a service dog. He was walking in our normal position, him on my right, slightly behind so he can watch me. He doesn't mind kids, so if I'm having a good day, I will have him sit and let the kids play with him. I go to that mall quite a lot, so I see the same kids often, and I've honestly bonded with a few of the families. Enter the entitled mother. I don't remember ever talking to her, so when she walked right up to me, I was quite confused. I wasn't having a very good day, so while I was standing, doing I don't know what, Tiger was laying between me and doing slow circles because that makes me feel safe. "Excuse me, may my son pet your dog?" she says in the Karen voice. You know what I mean. "I'm sorry, but he's a service dog and he's on duty, so he can't be pet right now," or something like that. I said this in my sweetest dealing with kids voice because I didn't want to seem like I was arrogant or anything. I went back to doing whatever I was doing. Tiger puts his paws on my thigh when something's wrong, and I immediately look down.
The small kid, probably around 4 to 6, was petting him. "Excuse me, can you tell your son not to touch my dog?" I again used a polite voice. "Why? I've seen you let other kids pet your dog," she snapped at me. I could feel the panic attack building up. I started shaking slightly, but was able to calm myself pretty fast. "Mommy, can I have the doggy?" My head snapped towards the kid, who was tugging on the leash and vest. "Of course, honey. How much for the dog?" He's not for sale. As I said, he's a service dog and is trained specifically by me for me. He was only partially trained when we adopted him, and I finished his training. "So? My son needs a service dog. He's clearly blind." In my brain, hold up, this doesn't add up. "Ma'am, if he did need one, you would have to have a dog trained specifically for him, because my dog is trained for PTSD. She huffed, grabbed her son, and walked off. I thought that was the end of it and walked to the food court. I sat with my pretzel and went through some schoolwork, I think. After a couple of minutes, I heard the same annoying Karen voice. "Okay, son, so distract that lady." I was confused, but for some reason went back to what I was doing. "Excuse me, miss." "Yes?" "What kind of doggy do you have?" Well, he's a lab." I didn't know what to say, because what should I say? He's like 6. Out of nowhere, I hear Tiger yelp and immediately looked to see where he was at. And there was Karen, holding his lead with one hand and his vest with the other. He was now about 3 feet away from me, so he was clearly uncomfortable. "Give me my dog." I was definitely way too calm for the situation I was in. "He's my dog. Someone called the police. This crazy lady is trying to take my service dog." I was shaking and breathing heavy because of one of my major triggers is people yelling at me. I was seriously upset. Not only did she steal my dog from me, but she then called me crazy. "Ma'am, give me my dog. Do you even know his name?" I'm still shaking and somehow managed to keep a stable and firm voice. "This is my dog, Ginger." Tiger didn't even move when he heard that. He was still standing here being handled by this nut job. I whistled because that's what I usually used to call him. "Tiger, come." He pulls hard on her to get to me and dragged her to the ground. She looked like she was about to explode. He sat between me again, and I grabbed his lead. "See, my dog." She pulls herself up and dragged my dog back to her again, smacking my arm in the process. She hit right where one of my worst scars are, and at that point, I lost all composure. "Give me my dog." I didn't care about being kind anymore. She didn't budge. "It's my dog. I'm calling the police." Enter Tyler and Sarah, a sweet younger couple who me and my family know quite well. OP? Who is that woman holding Tiger? "A psycho jerk that stole my dog." I'm shaking hard and was on the verge of tears because, PTSD. Sarah walked over and worked on trying to calm me down while Tiger was dealing with Thunder Jerk. "Give me the dog back before I have to do something I will regret." Fun fact, Tyler's in the army. "Don't touch me. I'll call my husband. He's a lieutenant." "Where at? Because I'm a first lieutenant." She completely stopped talking, handed over the dog, grabbed her poor son, and booked it out of here. Sadly, there's no happy ending really, but if anything changes, I'll update you. By the way, I took Tyler and Sarah out for ice cream after that incident. I no longer leave Tiger's lead laying around if I'm not holding it. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.